Oh, you think I'd be ready to go there? Sorry, something just broke. We'll talk about here in a minute. Welcome everyone to Law and Order, the show where my attorney friend Ryan Mullally will give you all of the legal points that are going on in our political system today, and there's never a shortage of it. And then I'll sit here and act like I'm smart and be like, yes, yes, I get that. So it's very good. Ryan, how you doing today, man? A lot going on.
I mean, we had the rare lull period. I feel like there's nothing to talk about legally. I mean, I don't know. What do you want to do for the next 2 hours?
You know, make fun of Brian Shapiro. That's no.
I mean,
You
we
know what?
don't. I don't have the hat for it. You didn't like. You got to give me some warning. I could get a hat.
I have one, but I can't send it to you now. Yeah. You know, it's just amazing. Every week you think like, well, maybe there will be a downturn, and it's like things come up that's maybe you know there's something that happens almost on a weekly basis. And I was like, wow, this is one of the biggest legal things that's occurred in quite some time. And then in a week, it's like, oh, there's another big legal thing that occurred. So, not to mention some things like sort of outside the scope of the legal realm, but that have been happening. Of course, the assassination attempt there at the press correspondence. And then apparently today, earlier, there was someone who was shooting outside JD Vance's motorcade outside the White House. So, a very, very tenuous time politically. And you have to think that some of these judges sort of feel that tension as well. And I guess one of the things I wanted to get your opinion on obviously, judges are supposed to be professional and supposed to be blind to the law, with the law and everything, but they're human. Do you think the judges in the Supreme Court and elsewhere in this country right now, assuming that they're good faith, do you think they feel how tenuous things are getting?
They must, and I think that there's a going back to our last show. Justice Thomas spoke about this indirectly. He didn't say anything directly about the politics, where he said that there's this growing tension between those who support the values of the Declaration of the Independence and those who support this kind of more progressive vision, and it's becoming pretty obvious. And you're seeing it. You're seeing fraying around the edges. The leak from the Supreme Court that we saw recently. We're going to talk about the Voting Rights Act, but just breaking news: the Supreme Court issued an order in advance so that Louisiana could attempt to redistrict in compliance with that opinion, and that's going to be viewed politically. You're seeing from people on the left increasingly open calls to pack the court and remake the Constitution in their image. So I do think we're playing with live ammunition at this point, Rob. I think everybody knows that tensions are pretty high and that the stakes are pretty high.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was saying. I was a couple seconds late because it just popped up on my feed that they sort of, I don't know what the exact term would be. You'll be able to tell us. They rushed along the Voting Rights Act case. I will put this up. It looks very short. So here you have it. Supreme Court, permit the losing party time to file petition, wait 32 days, etc. So they basically my reading of this is immediately they could start to redraw the Louisiana map. Is that basically your reading of it?
Basically, right. Yeah. Like normally, it takes a period of time for the Supreme Court to issue its official judgment, even though the opinion's already out there. Now here, if they waited that period of time, Louisiana was supposed to vote, I think, on May 16th.
Mhm.
So, like and I think they might have actually paused and rescheduled because they knew that this case was being decided. But this is I think very clear what's happening. Like Louisiana and the other parties were concerned that there wouldn't be enough time for the state to use this ruling in its districting before the election, and they rightly wanted to be able to put it into effect. But of course, the fact that this courtesy was given to Louisiana is going to be read as an assault on democracy.
Of course. Yeah. So reminder to everyone, get your super chats in. We will get to them all over on Ryan's channel. Blasterbot, thank you for the 5 memberships.
Blasterbot is good people. We had a Dino War on stream yesterday, and he was telling me some things about dinosaurs I never knew. So if you ever want to learn about dinosaurs, Blasterbot is apparently the guy to talk to.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't. Yeah, so let's start with that. So the Voting Rights Act, look, it sounds cliche to say this a lot about like sort of landmark decisions. I think obviously if the birthright citizenship case sort of gets overturned and we end up eliminating parts of birthright citizenship, that would be a bigger deal. But as far as I'm concerned, this is probably the biggest case since the ending of Chevron. It's that big. That my layman's reading of it is basically this: that there was a time where they specifically drew districts based on race, using race as a factor. Under the like to steelman the position, it was to sort of encourage representation from black communities that maybe because of their low population numbers felt that they weren't receiving adequate representation. The court has ruled basically in a 6-3 that you can't do that, that you can't factor race in. Am I reading that right? Obviously, there's more to it. Is that basically the layman's reading of it?
Yeah, and look, I think that I don't disagree with any of that, and I think that the Voting Rights Act, just to give people the background, was a landmark piece of legislation that was enacted after the 15th Amendment was passed, and it was meant to remedy some very serious harms. Jim Crow South, there were poll taxes, there were systems that were put in place that basically prevented black people from voting. And that was the issue, right? Like, even though they had the right to vote, they were being prevented from voting. Now, things have gotten a little complicated since then. And one of the things that I think everyone's aware of is that since the Supreme Court decided a case in 2019, states have had the right to do partisan gerrymandering. So they can gerrymander for partisan reasons. Like, I live in New Jersey. My vote is not going to count for a lot because my districts are drawn in such a way that a right-leaning vote is going to get washed out. That's just the nature of it. If you live in Louisiana, you're going to get gerrymandered in a right-leaning way. If you live in the Northeast, you're going to get gerrymandered in a left-leaning way. Everyone's getting gerrymandered right now. That's the story. But the Voting Rights Act, as interpreted, and I think we can talk about this, but probably incorrectly interpreted, meant that if you were a racial minority, and only if you were a racial minority, you could challenge the gerrymandering on the basis of racial discrimination. But that creates a very strange situation, right? Where it's like, you imagine in Louisiana, they gerrymander the district, and they're like, well, why'd you gerrymander the district? Is it because you were trying to gerrymander it because it's 90% Democrat? Or were you gerrymandering it because it's 90% black? Is it racism or is it partisan politics? Which one is it? And there's no real way to tell the difference. And that's what the Supreme Court was addressing, that in a world where partisan gerrymandering is okay, you don't want to create a super privilege that is only given to one segment of the population that allows them to challenge gerrymandering in a way that nobody else is allowed to challenge. Because I have no basis to challenge gerrymandering. When I get gerrymandered, I just have to sit there and eat it. And that's kind of where we are as a country right now. So there's some technicalities, but that's kind of the broad strokes of it. And of course, that was the end of democracy.
Yes, of course. Was the decision about just that it's unfair to give one group, or did the decision have specifically to do with race? Because a lot of times there are questions about if you could have laws that specify race, or if that itself is something that is racist, because there's other laws in the book that says race can't be a factor. So what was it, or was it a combination of both, that it said, no, there's just no special exceptions, period, or you can't have these exceptions based on race?
So can we share the screen? So
yeah.
This is the law in question. It's helpful to look at the text. And it says, no voting qualification or prerequisite to voting or standard practice or procedure shall be imposed or implied by any state in a manner which results in denial or abridgment of the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color, or in contravention of the guarantees set forth otherwise, right? So it is expressly a racial statute that says that if you are being denied the right to vote, or other policies or procedures on the basis of race, that's impermissible. Now, the first question you might ask yourself is, how does gerrymandering fit into this language? Because as I read it, well, gerrymandering doesn't affect your right to vote. It doesn't affect your right for your vote to be counted. It's not a practice or a procedure about whether you get to vote. So a few justices, Justice Thomas and Justice Gorsuch, wrote separately to say, this never applied to gerrymandering. It was never about gerrymandering. That was never part of the law. It's silly that we ever thought it was. What are we talking about? And I actually tend to agree with them.
Yeah.
I think this is about poll taxes and like putting in a literacy test that you only apply to black people, or saying black people have to show ID and white people don't, like something like that, which
yes,
would be dramatically unfair.
Prevents an individual from voting because there was a barrier based on race or color.
Modern gerrymandering, I just don't think it falls into that category. But even if you think it does, what the decision was saying is you can't have an abridgment, right? Your rights can't be, and we can take this down. Okay. Your voting right, you can't have less opportunity than the average voter. So what you're doing is you're supposed to compare how a black person in Louisiana's voting opportunity looks to a white person in Louisiana's opportunity to vote, and say the black person can't have less opportunity. Fair enough. But Justice Alito's point was the white voter gets gerrymandered too, right? The white voter doesn't have a right not to be gerrymandered on partisan basis. So if you're black and you're getting gerrymandered on a partisan basis, you have the exact same opportunity that a white person does who's getting gerrymandered on a partisan basis. What you would need to show, and Alito said you can still do this, you would need to show that the gerrymandering that they were doing does not have a legitimate purpose. Like, for example, if they said, yeah, we're trying to gerrymander for a partisan purpose, and then you're like, well, you could have achieved that partisan purpose. You could have kept Johnson in the House, but without screwing over every black person in the state. But you kept Johnson in the House and screwed over every black person in the state. That starts looking like a valid case. But if all you're saying is this had a disproportionate impact on black people, and it doesn't have any, there's no allegation, or you can't prove that it was separate from partisan politics, well, that's going to happen, right? Like what's I don't know the exact stat, but I think 90% of the black population votes Democrat.
Yeah.
So if you do partisan gerrymandering, it's bound to impact some black people in a red state. Like that's the nature of the game. Otherwise, you're basically saying that you can't gerrymander on a partisan basis. And think about how crazy that. Like in California, are we going to say like, oh my God, all those white conservatives got washed out? They got washed out, Rob.
Right.
You basically don't want to give a legal superpower to one small segment of the population as compared to everybody else.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just reading that, it's something that I thought reading this before, that there's other things that I don't understand how they pick and choose what they fall under the law there, right? For example, if gerrymandering falls under the VRA there, right, and it's like, well, it's not just can you vote or can you, or a poll tax or something like that, a literacy test aimed based on race. It's also, well, technically, you get to vote the same as everyone else, and it's counted the same as everyone else, but you're artificially placed in a district to mean that your vote will end up having less importance because it'll be a 90% district. Couldn't you also use this argument against the Electoral College? Like, couldn't blacks in California say, well, because the Electoral College, my voice disproportionately is thrown out for more of these swing states. Like, they're the ones that are going to matter more because. So it really is a stupid opinion, in my opinion, that this ever meant gerrymandering. Now, I have a lot of problems with gerrymandering, but this specifically, not one of them. And like you said, it would just make sense. Like, I'm going to blow everyone's mind here. In deep red states, they gerrymander to help the red. In deep blue states, they gerrymander to help the blue. Because blacks disproportionately vote blue, that means in red states, they're probably getting screwed a little more, right? Because they're Democrats, basically. But in the blue states, they're benefiting. And it's theoretically the white people that are more likely to vote conservative to get screwed over. So the point, basically, just to simplify, it's like, look, you can't just say, well, the blacks get to rise up and say, no, you can't gerrymander like that because it screws us over as a racial group if other groups can't do the same thing. And so it's just like no group could do that. You can't challenge it based on that reason.
Oh, and Rob, if you can pull up my share again, just to give you an example, and this is actually from the court opinion about how crazy this got. So this is the map that Louisiana did prior to them getting sued, right? And you can see they got 6 seats in the House. And these are the 6 districts. District 6 is majority black and majority Democrat, but Louisiana is a red state, so the other districts are red, right? And this is they wanted to make sure they kept important politicians like Mike Johnson in the House. Now, they got sued, and people successfully sued under the VRA. This is before the decision came out. And they said, well, black people are a third of Louisiana's population, so they should have 2 districts, not 1. Now, there's already an absurdity there, which is like, just because you are 1/3 of the state's population doesn't mean you get 1/3 of the districts. Like, what's the Asian population? Do they get do they get a 10th of districts? What's the Hispanic population? What's the, like, are there any other minorities that we could fit in here that are entitled to a district because of their percentages? And even if you thought it was a third of 6 is yes 2, but you would never get the exact number. No. So the whole thing's a bit absurd. But then Louisiana lost a court case, and they said, okay, so we have to come up with new maps. And we'll come up with new maps to create a second majority black district, but we don't want to screw over any of our sitting people in the House that are important politicians. So look at the map they had to come up with. Look at this giant district. This goes 250 miles across the state in this tiny band to create this new majority black district that met with all their partisan purposes. This is an absurd district. Like look at how the other districts have like geographic continuity. This is a joke of a district.
And then look at the orange one; it's going the whole way around it. Like, what a joke! Yeah.
So then they did this to accommodate the court order, and you can take it down. And they got sued again, and they got sued for having a different kind of gerrymandering. So the point is, in a world where states are allowed to gerrymander on partisan basis, which is new, people ask me sometimes, they're like, Ryan, this decision seems really unfair. Like, we've had the VRA since the 60s. How could the court change it right now? What changed? Well, that's the answer. In 2019, the court ruled that you could gerrymander on a partisan basis. And that changed everything. Because before, Rob, the states had to lie. They'd say, oh, we're gerrymandering because we want the districts to look like boxes. And then people would rightly say, well, you could make the district look like a box without screwing over all the black people, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, we could, right? But now they're saying, we want to gerrymander so our guys win. And then it's like, well, if in a world of identity politics, which is what we've been doing for the past 10 years, where people strongly identify race with politics and you have like a 90% correlation, how on earth can you do a partisan gerrymander that's not going to have a disproportionate impact on the basis of race? It's impossible. So the law had to be changed because the interpretation didn't make any sense.
So what is the practical application of this? I've heard people say, look, this could lead to 20 more seats, 25 more seats for Republican, 5 more seats for Republican. I've heard other people say, look, there's no chance these maps get redrawn in a serious way. Maybe Louisiana, that'll be it before the election. What do you think? Like, what happens now? What's the next step?
It's going to be very hard for states to get this done before the midterms. Like in 28 and 30, this is going to be very lively, and I think this will change maps for sure. In the midterms, I would guess that maybe Louisiana, maybe 1 or 2 other states are fast enough, because now you can use AI and these kind of modern tools to draw maps really quickly. So they might be quick enough to get a map done and get that into place before the midterms, but it's going to be challenged legally on some basis. So I'm going to guess it's going to be like 4 or 6 seat advantage that goes to the conservatives. I don't think it'd be more than that, and 6 seems high. But it will be an advantage in 26. But it'll, practically speaking, I'm not sure states are going to be able to do much with this in time.
I agree totally. One thing I've thought about this, I don't think we're likely to see this pan out anytime soon. But one of the things about aggressive gerrymandering, if you think of it, it leads to a potential of more of a landslide victory, right? Mm-hmm. Because what you're doing, to simplify this, right? Like, in effect, if you want to help your side, what you do is, let's say there's one area that's 90% your opponent's, right? And normally they would have that area and you're going to lose that seat. But you're like, let's break it up into little branches. Now, instead of that one district, now they get 0 because they're broke up. But those people were all going to be voting in all those other districts. So maybe formally they would have won that one district 90%, and you would have won your 4 districts by 70%, right? 70 to 30. Now, though, it's going to be a little tighter. So if there is ever a situation where it's like there's a very unpopular party for that specific election, you could see that this shrinks the margins, and all of a sudden it's not inconceivable that it could backfire, right? That it's like, oh shit, now we ended up losing seats. I don't think they look at it that way because our elections are so close now with these national elections normally, but it is something to think about.
It definitely could happen, Rob. And this is it's not the only reason, but like rationales like that and that kind of analysis that you gave, which I agree with, is why the court in part ruled in 2019 that you can do partisan gerrymandering, because the court was basically saying like, look, and they said this a few times, like, do we like partisan gerrymandering? No, but the Constitution doesn't preclude it.
Right.
And there's no standard a court could use. There's nothing a court could say like, oh, well, I'm apply this test and therefore this gerrymander is good and this gerrymander is bad. Like there's nothing. There's no legal standard. So the courts are staying out of it, and we're seeing states gerrymander all over the place, and that's up to them. It is a political calculation. It could go very badly. You could gerrymander your state so thin that you backfire and you give a lot of seats to the other party. This can, and if we keep gerrymandering as aggressively as we have been, almost certainly will happen in the future. I mean, it might not be today, but it will definitely happen at some point. And hopefully that puts an end to the arms race. But right now, baby, we're in the arms race. I mean, that's what this is. And every state is gerrymandering everywhere. It's all across the board. It's wild attempts to gerrymander. And in that context, and Justice Alito said this, like, how do you tell the difference between a real Section 2 challenge and a partisan political move that cloaks itself in Section 2? You can't. They look exactly the same. So now he said, you have to be able to show that there was a map that did everything the state wanted to do, including keeping their guys in office, that doesn't use race, but was better and didn't have these problems. If you can do that, you're fine. But if you can't do that, don't bring your challenges. And that does effectively end most of these challenges.
It's and you're right. It's hard to, like, let's say you wanted to get rid of gerrymandering. I don't even know what you would look at to, like, like you were saying, is the test to be like, oh, this is where it's legit and here's where it's not. One of the things that people talk about is they'll look to a state and they'll say something like this. This state was 45% Trump voters and yet zero representation. Well, that doesn't mean that's a result of gerrymandering. For example, if you just think like if a state's like New Mexico or something like a box, let's say it had 4 districts and it's 48% Republican and 52% Democrat. If that was evenly spaced in all 4 districts, guess what? That's 0 Republican districts. That's just the way it goes. So you can't, like, I get it, and I get the partisan nature of it, right? Where Democrats want to be like, oh my goodness, Louisiana is going to have no blue, or, these states, these southern states that are red, they're getting rid of all the blue. And Republicans counter, look at the Northeast, right? All of these areas, they're like 45% Trump voters, no representation. Yeah, gerrymandering has a lot to do with it. But if you're a court and you're trying to definitively say, yep, this is what's bad, you really can't use that, because you could reliably say, you mean to tell me we couldn't come up with a map that wouldn't be gerrymandering, that also couldn't fall into that world? So and the other thing about this is there's an awful lot. I'm tried and true conservative. I'll stick with the Republicans over the Democrat, even though I have significant problems with the Republicans, right? There are issues where I'll say, I think the Dems are worse. I think they started it. I think like the whole shit with Bork started going downhill with what we see at the Supreme Court justice. I have no clue with gerrymandering. I don't. I've looked into some of the history of it. The truth is Republicans and Democrats are equally shitty. They just are. They're shitty with this. Everybody's playing this game in their own state, and it's accelerating, like you said, an arms race. So there is no high horse. And so when you hear these people, that's the first thing I want to talk about. Then we'll get to the race portion. You hear these, whether it be with Florida redistricting or other Texas redistricting, this is the end of democracy, et cetera, when all of a sudden Virginia, when they redistrict, it's, oh, well, that's fairness. That's just being fair. Like, do you agree with me that it's like it has nothing to do with fairness? It has nothing to do with one side ending democracy. This is both sides playing the game within the rules that they've set forth. And yeah, it's shitty to those of us that maybe wouldn't want it to be so partisan, but I don't think there's any good guys here, really.
No. And to quote the great Thomas Sowell, because he's always a good quote, when people get used to preferential treatment, equal treatment feels like discrimination. And that's what the VRA case was, right? Like for a long time, and certainly I think at least the past, like since 2019, but I think before that, there was an arms race of gerrymandering. That's what this was about. There was an arms race of gerrymandering. I don't think that there's a good guy side. I agree with you. I think Republicans do it, Democrats do it. You can look at any state, you're probably going to find gerrymandering at this point. And at the end of the day, the reason that the left is so upset about this decision is the VRA was one of their tools in their toolbox, where if they was gerrymandering in a red state, they would bring litigation to challenge it on the basis of the VRA. It was one of their countermeasures, and that countermeasure is not available. But that countermeasure wasn't available to, white conservatives in blue states. Not really. So, like at a certain point, you've got to ask yourself, like, why is it that we have this particular countermeasure available in this particular way when it's meant to be ensuring that minorities don't have less opportunity, but nobody's getting that opportunity? Like, to your point, Rob, put a map of the United States on the wall, throw a dart at it, you'll hit a state, that state's gerrymandering. Like there's no state that's not at this point. Like it is absolutely an arms race.
Kyle ran a mile for $5 says, what are the moral ethics of gerrymandering?
Oof.
The idea is, like, the way it's used now is to basically keep incumbents, right? That's like sort of, obviously it's to give your side more seats, but then what they're using it for is like, we want to make sure we have safe districts, right? And so you could theoretically say this. There's a concept that with like these smaller regional places that it helps them get more representation. Otherwise, maybe they would just run a flood of bigger areas and would be less likely to have a voice. And when you're grouping not based on just a geographic box, but other reasons that could be in gerrymandering, like it could be like communities. For example, let's say I have a small town here and then there's Pittsburgh and then a small town here. You might gerrymander my small town and that one together and leave Pittsburgh out of it, even though it looks a little weird because the Pittsburgh voices would override and they wouldn't understand the representatives there, our area as much. And there's things like that. Ultimately, I think that it's not a good thing, but it's very difficult to know what the bright line would be for what we allow and what we don't. And I think that's what you're saying the court said, where it's like, look, we don't know where the Constitution gives us the right to say you can't do this. You're just going to have to pass a law. We don't get to arbitrarily say, nope, we're going to interfere in the states in this way. So I would say there are reasons that you could say it is moral and ethical, but I don't know. I think it's used poorly for people that just want to win.
And in terms of the ethics of it, I think that like a lot of things in our system that are not justiciable, like this is just not a thing courts can decide for all the reasons Rob just said. It's governed by norms, right? And this is like, it's the same conversation we're going to have if we talk about breaking the filibuster or packing the Supreme Court. And packing the Supreme Court is actually maybe the better example, because when I talk about like how dangerous it is that the left is talking about packing the court, openly talking about packing the court at this point. And people say, like, oh, well, what's the big deal? Well, you have to play it out. You have to do a little game theory. You have to be like, well, what happens if one side breaks this norm in this way? And if you look at the partisan gerrymandering, set aside who started it, doesn't really matter. Once the genie's out of the bottle, everyone's just going full bore. You kind of have to have a truce or you have partisan war in this regard. And right now we have partisan war. And that's what happens when some of these long-standing norms are eroded. Some of them are more important than others. Like if we start seeing partisan court packing, where it's like the Dems pack it, they put 3 or 4 justices on, then 20 years later, the right wins, they put 15 conservative justices on. Like you're gonna see the rule of law deteriorate very quickly. This is absolutely live ammunition. This is not a drill. So I think gerrymandering is in some senses a cautionary tale about the importance, if you're worried about the morality of these things, about keeping some of those guardrails in place. Because once they're gone, there's no brakes on the train. I don't know why a state would not gerrymander at this point. It would seem almost insane for them not to gerrymander at this point, like political malpractice.
Yeah, and the morality of it factors very little into it. Someone in the chat was like, "Oh, so just leave the maps." No, quite the opposite. I'm just saying. I'm not saying like, "Oh, we need to gerrymander. We have a moral duty to do so. We are the good people." No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying wherever it started, whoever's taking advantage of it more, it is an arms race. That's it. Dems going to do it. Repubs are going to do it. So, it's like if your state's like, nah, we're not going to do it. All you do is give the other side, you cede ground to the other side. So, and I don't think it's near on par with things like packing the court or lawfare and things we see like that, where when you break the ceiling on that, I think that's far more damaging. 2 more points on this. First, what do you say? Because the number one criticism that we're getting from this case specifically is this is racist. It's an illegitimate racist court. And here we are. We're screwing over black people. And now there's going to be less black representation. And it's just racism. It's another example of Trump and company and his Supreme Court's racism. I don't take that criticism very seriously. I'm assuming you don't either, but I know you've heard it. So how do you respond to that?
Racism is when you stop giving extra preferential treatment to one group on the basis of race. Yeah. That's basically what it is. Like, look, the logic of that Alito used was very clear in this. He was saying, like, you have to, the law requires that a minority group is giving lesser opportunity than the majority receives. But the majority does not receive the right to cast a vote absent political gerrymandering. In fact, what they receive is exactly the right to cast a vote that has been politically gerrymandered. So how is that in and of itself a problem? Like, you would need to show that there's actually a racial issue here. You'd need to show that this is not just a partisan gerrymander. And I think that's very unlikely that people are going to show that, because, to be honest with you, and maybe I'm wrong, but in my interaction with politicians and conservatives, I don't think they're sitting there twisting their mustaches being like, how do we stop black people specifically from voting? I think they're twisting their mustaches and saying, how do we stop Democrats from electing people? That's what they're doing. They're trying to win elections. They don't care, right? They're doing it by the political numbers. And if you can show that they're doing it by if they're doing it on the basis of race, and you can show that, then sign me up. That's wrong. And you can still make that challenge. You're still allowed to make that challenge. But you have to show it's not just a political thing. And I think 99 out of 100 times you're going to find out it is a political thing. They're worried about keeping their guys in power, just like the people in California are worried about keeping their guys in power. It's the same thing.
So it reminds me of, I forget the name of the gentleman. He's a black gentleman who was like involved in civil rights, but he's conservative. And I remember listening to him talk a few years ago about this law in California, and it was created in November 5th in 1996, and it is Section 31 of Article 1 of the Declaration of Rights in California. This is how it reads. I'll bring it up for you. It says, "The state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting." Seems very simple. It's something that most of us would get behind. Like, yeah, you can't favor or disfavor a group because of their race, because of their sex, because of their religion. Great. And largely this was passed with a lot of left-wing, like, sort of support. It's the Democrats now that are trying to overturn that in California. Because they're like, we should be able to give preferential treatment based on race. Because under that law, affirmative action when it comes to government jobs or government education wouldn't be allowed. You're not allowed to give preferential or detrimental treatment, but you can't give preferential treatment. And so the Democrats are like, well, that's not going to work for us. That's what this reminds me of. It's racist to remove the preferential treatment. To treat everyone equally is now deemed racist. And it goes back to that Thomas Sowell quote you had, right? If you've had advantageous treatment, to be treated like everyone else feels like discrimination. Feels like you're being screwed with now, just because that's the way it's been for so long. So yeah, to me, it's ludicrous. It's the opposite of racism. It's saying, hey, we're going to try to treat everyone the same based on their race. And so for the people that are, they're sort of giving the game away when they say, no, it's racist to not give certain groups preferential treatment. So
Yeah, and look, the thing, the brutal truth about this is, when it comes to partisan gerrymandering, everybody in America is treated pretty shitty. Like, you don't have, like, there's no right to be not gerrymandered, right? Like, I can tell you, I am personally gerrymandered. Like, this is a thing that happens to people all across the country. So being treated equally might feel like shit if you're not used to it. Like, if you used to have the right to be treated special, and now you have to get treated the same as everybody else, that equality can be a bitch. But it used to be uncontroversial that we had a race-blind constitution, and that any decision that was giving preference to one group over another on the basis of race is inherently suspect and odious, and should only be reserved for situations where there was a specific articulated harm that happened in the recent past that we're trying to fix today, and there's evidence to show that it's possible. But recently, the left has gotten so down with this kind of like Ibram X. Kendi style argument, where the only remedy to past discrimination is future discrimination, that they've almost adopted it as a wholesale tentpole. They're like, we really do want the right to discriminate on the basis of race in the good way. That's one of the things we really feel strongly about doing. And I think that's insane. And I do hope that Republicans get a little better at drawing out that in messaging, because that really is a crazy thing, and I don't think Americans will like it.
And then James, $20 over on your side, says, we could greatly reduce gerrymandering if we shrink the districts down to 30,000 people, like was suggested at the founding. Would also dilute the small state advantage in Electoral College. Also, more expensive for rent seekers. Electoral College, I don't know how. Like the Senate, you would have 2 in each, and then the Electoral College votes would still be the same. I believe there's not
I'm not sure how that would affect the Electoral College.
I think it would. You could say it would in the House of Representatives. It would make more populous states have more representation. That's certainly true, but proportionally, I don't know that it would. Nonetheless, that seems unwieldy. I mean, 30,000 at the time of the founders was different than a country that has 350 million people. I mean, just a little math.
You'd have the Galactic Senate, right? You'd have,
right.
But now here's the thing I like about it now, because I think it is impractical, it's unwieldy, and for a lot of reasons, it's not going to happen. But here's what I like about it. I don't think members of the House are supposed to be national politicians. Like, I don't think like national news should be following like AOC or Mike Johnson. Like, I feel like the House of Representatives should be more similar to like your state representative, where it's like, it's a small, they're like, it's not even like I represent Louisiana. They're like, I represent the coastal fishermen in this tiny little region of Louisiana. And like, my highest priority is fishing regulation. Like that's what I went to Congress to do. And that gets balanced by having a lot of other people with regional interests. I do like that. I don't like the nationalization of our politics. And it does bother me that House members are almost like members of the Senate now, where they really are national level politicians in some sense. I think that's a problem, but I don't know if this is a feasible solution.
No, I mean, depending on how you would break that down, my count is over 10,000 members of the House of Representatives. And I mean, now maybe you could say, okay, instead of 30,000, maybe 300,000. I don't know. But
you think they'd let Trump build that building?
After
the ballroom, he'll build the 10,000 seat Coliseum for the voting.
Boy, that's sort of outside the scope of the show, but I'll just ask you real quick. Like, I thought it was so funny how so many of these people on the left that we've interacted with didn't understand Trump's ballroom point. Now, you could say, look, come on now, man. You're pushing that now. But they were like, what the hell does this have anything to do? I mean, how could you not see that he's saying the building was unsecure? Mm-hmm. If it was at the White House, security's much easier. And they just feign, as always, they feign ignorance. Like, I think it was Pisco was like, do you really think the ballroom had any connection to the shooting? Like, yeah, dude. The would-be assassin was like, I'm really pissed off about Trump's ballroom. Like, get the hell out of here. We know what he's talking about.
It is funny because it's this bizarre technicality where they're like, well, the press dinner was so big it wouldn't have fit in the ballroom. And it's like, I don't even know if that's true, but let's grant them that one for the sake of argument. You don't think the president's like, I have other events and there could be shooters at other events and that wouldn't cross his mind, given that he's been shot at other events before? Yeah, like it doesn't take a great leap of imagination to be like, hey, I would prefer to have events in a secured environment to the extent possible.
Imagine that, like, fucking, there's an attempt on Barack Obama, right? And he's like, this is why we need to make significant changes to the Secret Service or something. And Republicans would have been like, really? You're going to play partisan right now with this? If we count the shooting outside, we'll have to see what the details are today. That's 4 live shooters, right? 4 trying to assassinate Trump in his second term. 4. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, it gets a little suspicious when the left's first term is like, oh, how dare you suggest a building with more security? Technically, maybe this one wouldn't have been hosted there. Methinks they speak. I see over there Alish, who said on my channel, heavily implied you wanted people to start taking shots at the Trump administration. I'm not surprised you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. He would suggest more security. Go figure. The very people that say they want the man dead are complaining that he wants a venue with more security. Who would think,
I mean, it's wild. And then the other thing about it is, this is going back to the pack the court point. You have the VRA case. And they're like, this is the end of democracy. And they're like, so what are we going to do? We're going to abolish the Constitution, right? Because like when you talk about the kind of court packing they're proposing, like adding, let's say they want to add 4 seats, right? Well, what couldn't you do if you did that level of court packing? Like you just put on, the most loyalist, slavishly unjudicial 4 people you could think of. And then you go up there and you're like, hey, you know what? We think the Second Amendment doesn't guarantee a right to bear arms. We want to revisit this whole militia point. No more gun rights. And it turns out that we do have the right to censor the internet. And it turns out that X is actually harming people, and you can't harm people. Therefore, X, that has to be expropriated by the state. Like you can just completely rewrite the Constitution with that level of partisanship. It's a giant loophole, and it's wild. It's a wild thing to propose. Like I was saying the other day on Wick Show, and I think this is true, it would be worse than everything they have accused Trump of doing if everything they accused Trump of doing were true. Like you sum it all up, what they're proposing is actually worse. So, it's a crazy moment we're living in, Rob. I think that this has to be, I don't know, for me, that's like a wedge issue. Like even if I was blackpilling in a world where the left's about to pack the court, no matter how mad I was at conservatives, I would think twice about sitting out the next election.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
That's a point of no return. And you can see quickly, I mean, they could quite literally do things like, we're going to keep our opponents off the ballot. You saw they tried that in Colorado. I mean, imagine what that looks like. We're just going to put 6 partisans on the court that we know reliably will do whatever we want, and they're going to rule that our opponents can't run. We're going to have, the Brazil situation. We're just going to jail and refuse to allow the main opponent to run. And the Supreme Court would be like, yep, because you just packed it with people you wanted. It's really bad. Blasphemous gives us each 20 and says, for the end of the stream, we need to have a debate between you two about Allosaur and Diplodocus. Who's your favorite dinosaur is cooler than the others? It's very clearly important, serious debate topic. It would take probably 3 hours. So I don't know that we have time for this show, but maybe we'll set it up someday.
I mean, I think this is an important topic, Rob, and I respect you too much not to give you my opening argument in advance, so you can prep. All right. Okay. So because Blaster is greasing us, here's my main theme. My kids are irrationally attached to Diplodocus. My daughters are cuter than you, therefore they are correct. Therefore, Diplodocus is the best dinosaur. Now, I think you're going to have a hard time squirming out of that trap, Rob. I think it's going
Now,
to be
my big argument against Diplomatic Talk is now I feel bad making it, which is it sounds perverted. Like it sounds like it sounds like a part of anatomy or something. So I'd sooner not even say the word. And then when it comes
that
to
with pictures of my daughter's smiling faces on stream, Rob.
I'll go first. Then you'll be accused of bringing them up. But also, I mean, come on. Eckley Source is a walking tank with a sledgehammer for a tail. What's Diplodocus going to do? Run. That's it. I could run. Not far.
I did point this out that when we brought this up on stream that like the sledgehammer tail is tough to beat. That's a very cool dinosaur. But you know what? I stand with my people. My daughters, they know like 2 dinosaur names. That's the one I'm going with.
Never mind. Your daughters are young. They're not like teenagers. They're young.
Oh, yeah. No. They're not like fucking... Yeah, they're 28,
My daughter's 27. She's really obsessed with Diplodocus, you know? James, for $10, says, Article 2, Section 1, each state shall appoint number of electors equal to the number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled to Congress. I forgot about that. I thought that it was just the electors were... I didn't realize it was just the senators plus the representatives. Yeah, I think the electoral, for reasons I've already stated, I don't think that helps the argument. I don't think proportionally going to 10,000 electoral college people helps us, in my opinion. You know?
That would be very funny though. Like, you know, when you're playing like an American video game and the hit point bar is like out of 100, and then you switch to a Japanese video game and the hit point bar is like 86,000.
Yep.
And you know, all the numbers are just bigger. So the electoral college just becomes the exact same thing, but the numbers are huge.
Yeah.
Like you need 250,000 votes to get the presidency. It would be good television.
I mean, the argument would be it would dilute the purpose of the electoral college. Because what would happen then, like a state like Wyoming would still probably be around 4 or 5 votes in the electoral college. So they would basically be nothing. It'd be a complete wash. No one would give a shit about Wyoming anymore. They'd just be like, yep, fuck you. No, we're not even going to campaign there. We don't care. And other small states. And everyone would just spend their time campaigning in New York City and LA, you know, and it'd be a mess. So, I mean, as a rural person, yeah, fuck all that, I guess is what I would say.
Well, but you also got to think that like the reason that these things, people always have these clever solutions to the electoral college, but they never happen because the electoral college is designed to protect states' rights. And it turns out that the senators are there to protect their states' rights. Could you imagine being such a goddamn traitor that you were sent there from Delaware and you're like, fuck it, abolish the electoral college. Like, wait a minute, hold on. You know, how does that help Delaware?
Yeah, it's I don't get it. The voter pacts like that as well, right? The popular vote pact. Have you seen this?
Yeah. Okay, so you guys don't know what it is. Some states are signing what you can call it whatever you want, but it's a pact where they say that they're going to put their electoral college votes for whoever wins the popular vote, no matter what. If enough states sign on, that would be a winning play. Like basically that it guarantees the result. The popular vote is the same as the electoral college vote. Here's my take on that, Rob. I don't think it works. Like, you know, I think you can start getting this coalition together, but like, let's say at some point, Louisiana joins. And then the election's coming, Louisiana's like, holy shit, this is going to happen, and it's going to happen the wrong way. I guess we undo that law. You know, like how do you?
Yeah, there'd be no enforcement of it, right? It's just an agreement, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's exactly what happened.
It might be enforceable by state law, but then the state legislature could just undo that law,
right? And they're overwhelmingly blue, and now blue would have won the presidency, but it's going to go red because you signed this pact. You're going to find a reason to be like, well, it turns out. Right, like that's exactly what would happen. So
yeah, I mean, who's signing a suicide pact where you're like, oh yeah, it turns out that the people of my state overwhelmingly want the other guy to be president, but we passed this law. There's nothing we can do. I guess we'll just ignore the people. It's like, no, that's not how state government works. They're going to clearly do something about that.
Yep, totally agree. And then lastly, 2 more real quick. James, another 10 says, add to that not happening file, repeal the 17th, the ultimate rent seeker stream. Get rid of the 17th. I'm for that.
Holy shit. I mean, I'm basically the opinion that anything that was done by Woodrow Wilson is fair game.
Yeah.
But like this is a bad one. Like this just, I get that they were trying to solve problems, but the 17th Amendment, for those who don't know, it used to be that the states appointed their senators and now they're directly voted for. And this just, on a civics level, it destroyed the idea that the states have a prominent role in our federalism.
It's the opposite now. Yeah. Now it's all national. Right now it's a disaster. I agree. It also defeats the purpose of what the Senate's supposed to be, right? Which is supposed to be this. It's almost like in between the House and the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court's lifetime appointed, so they don't have to worry about politics, right? The Senate was supposed to be sort of the legislative, similar to that branch, right? Where you're appointed. You don't have to campaign, in other words. Right? You're supposed to be there. You're the sober branch that's further away from the people. Now it's like, I mean, half of what you see senators doing is grandstanding for the next election. And it's like, yeah, that's all shit. We're spending hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars in many of these Senate races. It's just a joke. And it's against the spirit of like sort of what the intent was, that the voice of the state was supposed to matter. Now it's like, you're more likely to see big money come in from around the country to prop up one senator, and it's a mess. The people of the state then end up with less representations. I agree with you.
It's a nightmare, and also it's the classic progressive move. Like if you go back to why it happened, the complaint was about corruption at the state level. They were saying the state legislatures are corruptly appointing these guys. We got to do something about it. But this is always the progressive move, right? They're never like, the progressives never come in and they say like, here's a problem. And you know how we can fix it? Less national government.
Yeah.
Right? It turns out they're always like, here's a problem. And you know how you could fix it? Doing what we want. Right? Let's have more national government. Every time. It's never like an honest assessment. It's always like, oh God, we found another problem. Could I interest you in some more government, Rob? Would you like some more government?
Increase the size of government causes problem. Answer: increase size of government. That's it's always. It's just they never say, "Oh, we screwed up. Let's roll that back." It's always, well, the only way out's through. So more and more. Devil's Raspberry, $2. Could Thunderdomes actually work? And would you support them? I don't know. Do they have to include big giant like nonverbal guys with tiny people on their shoulders? Like, is that a necessary for Thunderdomes?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I'm for it. We'll increase employment opportunities. Look, we cut the federal workforce so much. We could give those people the option. Like, now what you could do is you can enter the Thunderdome and fight for your salary, and then we'll broadcast it. And, Trump could put it on like a White House Netflix, charge a subscription fee, and bam! We all get taxes back, surplus at the end of the year.
I mean,
what a great idea.
This is the way to reinvent the American economy, right? Like we're no longer a service economy. We're a Thunderdome economy. That's how we do everything these days.
And then James over in your channel again says, how about this one for popular vote compact? Tessa says, we ain't doing popular vote for president. Y'all state house doing it. What is the popular vote then?
I'm not sure I understand. Are you suggesting that the state legislature just decides who the electors are? Because I don't think that I don't think that works. I think you do have to guarantee one person, one vote for the presidential election. I don't think you can just have the state do it without some kind of. You'd have to at least pass. There'd have to be some kind of intervening law, if not amendment. But off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Now, while we're on it, I guess we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but it is interesting. So on the subject of gerrymandering, Virginia wins in a narrow election to redraw their map that's going to be very favorable to the Democrats and give them a couple more seats. And almost instantly, a judge rules that the map, I believe the ruling was it was against the Virginia Constitution. Have you heard anything about this case? And like, what's your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I think that James is right. By the way, I just looked it up. The Constitution says each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives. So I think James actually has a point.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the arguments with the alternate electors, that it's like the Constitution gives a lot of fucking leeway to the states. right? And it's sort of like, a state could just theoretically be like, yeah, fuck what our people voted for. Our legislator says, fuck you. We're going to appoint the electors we want. And there'd be difficulties. Now you'd have to face the wrath of your voters, I guess. That would be furious, but anyways.
Hey, you know what? Let's pack the court and put James on.
Yes, there we go.
He's figured it all out. But yeah, so Virginia, Rob, sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure I answered that because I think I had a suspicion he was right. I wanted to double check. So Virginia, look, I think this is the sort of thing that's gonna be the type of challenge you see now with the VRA now more limited, which is the question in Virginia was, yes, Virginia did a partisan gerrymander. They had a vote about whether they could do this partisan gerrymander, but there are rules in the Virginia state constitution about when you can do such things and what the procedure is. How do you call a general assembly? Do you need a general assembly to change the constitution to allow for a partisan gerrymander that the state constitution of Virginia wouldn't normally allow for? Can you do that when a third of the people have already cast their vote because they were voting early? So there's a lot of local Virginia law that governs these things. And I think that's increasingly what you're going to see is that when a state does a gerrymander, their recourse is not going to be what does federal law say? It's going to be what does state law say? And in this case, it does seem like they ran afoul of the Virginia Constitution. So they're going to, I assume that's not the end of the story, Rob. I assume they'll try again and see if they can find some way to fix this. But I think that is what the future of this litigation looks like for those lawyers who are in the business of challenging these gerrymanders.
Yeah, and this specifically, I read a little into this case. Now, the judge overruled it on like several reasons. The easiest one for me to understand is this: like the language, the Constitution, when it comes to, I don't know what the specific term is for something like this, like proposals that you're directly voting on.
Oh, for a referendum?
A referendum, right? Yeah. It says that the language has to be neutral, right? And the Democrats, they wrote this referendum to be like, in order to restore fairness, blah, 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 right? And it's like, you can't do that. And what I was reading, I was watching Mark Halperin and some others today that I really enjoy watching. They try to be as unbiased as possible. And they were like, look, the scuttlebutt was, there were a bunch of Republicans that were like, look, don't even piss your money away fighting this. The reason they didn't spend much money fighting it was because their lawyers were telling them like, yeah, this is dead in the water. Like as soon as this, and the other thing is Democrats are moaning because they're like, well, why wouldn't you challenge it beforehand? But my understanding of reading into this is like the judge doesn't intervene beforehand, right? Like, so the judge would have never intervened had this been a no vote. No, we're not changing it. They would have said, doesn't matter. The judge only is allowed to intervene, or maybe the norms of it is, it's not a legal issue, but the norms, they wait until something passes that's bad law, as opposed to saying this law that's been proposed is bad. If it passes, then they get to weigh in. And so, it's not as if this judge was like some partisan, like, yeah, I'm just going to wait for them to get their hopes up. It was like, look, I can't really weigh in until it's voted on. And then once it's voted on, I can weigh in and say, this is not constitutional. Again, for those listening, the Virginia Constitution, not the federal Constitution. And so, I mean, it seems like there's a good chance it's definitely being appealed, but there's a good chance the appellate court's going to say, no, it's no good. Like, it's clearly partisan language, and amongst a couple other problems as well with some of the ways they filed this. And so, man,
I mean, look, that's how it goes. Like, courts don't take hypotheticals on, right? There has to be an actual event, an actual law, an actual legally actionable thing. A hypothetical legislation is not actionable. Like, you can't go to court over something that the government might do. You have to go to court over something the government did. And that's it, just as a general rule. But then also, this is not a legal point. This is more of like a debate bro point. But like, are we really crying foul about taking people to court over gerrymandering at this point? Like, really? Like that's supposed to, like, I think we kind of crossed the Rubicon on gerrymandering. Like the gloves have been off for a long time. Like, yeah, like
I agree.
I would expect that people time lawsuits to be maximally disruptive. Like, where have you been? That's all they've been doing.
So it's funny. It's funny. This was their big like, oh, we got you, and then now it's probably not going to affect by the midterm because if they have to redo it, it'll certainly be too late. Now, look, I wanted to move on to the Comey thing, but I definitely think this is the biggest. The implications of this are massive. Like you said, it could be 5 to 6 seats in the midterms. It could be a solid 20 seats, 25 by the time we get to like 2028 or 2030. Those here. So this, I'm just reading this. This is from SCOTUS Wire's putting this up. So we'll put that up. This is Alito's dissent, and he's just excoriating Jackson on the decision today. So we'll read this real quick. It says, Alito with Justice Thomas and Gorsuch join concurring. The dissent in this suit levels charges that cannot go unanswered. The dissent would require that the 2026 congressional elections in Louisiana be held under a map that has been held to be unconstitutional. The dissent does not claim that it is now too late for the state legislature or district court to adopt a new map that complies with the Constitution, nor does it assert that it's feasible for the elections to be held under such a map. Instead, the dissent offers 2 reasons for its proposed course of action. One is trivial at best, the other is baseless and insulting. The first is compliance with the 32-day default rule of the court's rulings, but as the court order explains, there's good reason to depart from the default rule, the principal day, 32, default, blah, blah, blah. It's the second part that's interesting. The second reason offered by the dissent is that we should allow the 32-day period to run out in order to, quote, avoid the appearance of partiality. But the dissent does not explain why its insistence on unthinking compliance with Rule 45.3's default rule does not create the appearance of partiality by running out the clock on behalf of those who may find it politically advantageous to have the election occur under the constitutional map. The dissent goes on to claim that our decision represents an unprincipled use of power. And just like that, those principles give way to power. That is a groundless and utterly irresponsible charge. What principle is the court violated? The principle that Rule 45.3's 32-day default period should never be shortened, even when there's good reason to do so. The principle we should never take any action that might unjustifiably be criticized as partisan. Now, this strikes me as pretty pointed language there by Alito. But what say you? Does it seem like he's a little perturbed by like sort of the accusation that they're partisan or that it's a power grab?
I mean, rightly so, because here's the thing. So for those of you who are reading along, I think you understood this. This is not the decision. This is the decision to issue a judgment faster than the 32-day default, right? And as Alito said, the oral argument was 7 months ago. This is a case about redistricting for the midterms. Why did it take so long to get the opinion out? Well, we know one of the reasons that can slow down, I am speculating here, but I think I have grounds to do so. One of the things that slows down issuing an opinion, we saw this in Dobbs, is that the dissent isn't done yet. They need a little extra time. They need a little extra time to get the dissent together. And then they want the 32-day rule. And then the VRA decision happens after the midterms, right? So, don't you think, and I can't prove this. I just think it's reasonable based on what we know to think that this is probably true. Don't you think Alito probably got his main opinion done a while ago? Certainly, Justice Thomas and Justice Gorsuch just wrote a 2-pager saying this was never a good idea. This was never legal. Whatever. Like, we're done here. Like, I think, gun to my head, we're only close to the 32-day rule because the dissent was slow. Right. And then it's like, oh, well, now you're being unreasonable because you're shortening this period. Well, OK, I think that like in a sane world, if people are challenging a map as unconstitutional and as gerrymandered, and the court says, yes, it is. It's unconstitutional. You shouldn't have used race the way you used it. And then the court says, well, but even though it's unconstitutional, use it for 2026. Just use that gerrymandered map because, 32-day rule. Like, it's kind of insane when you actually say it out loud. So I think he's right to be a pissed off.
Well, and imagine that it was the other way. Imagine some state requires an ID to vote, right? And then 10 days before the election, the court's like, this ID is racist, right? It disenfranchises black people. And the state goes, well, we already have the ballots printed, right? The procedures we've already instructed all of our poll workers, so we're going to go ahead and keep doing the policy you just said was unconstitutional and racist because it's so close to the election. Jackson would be the first one saying, this is outrageous. We've ruled this to be racist and unconstitutional. And it reeks of, it's very similar. Obviously, it's different because these are Supreme Court justices, but with the Kavanaugh confirmation, right? What happened with the, if you really looked into it, this is what was going on. They knew that they weren't going to be able to prove shit against Kavanaugh. What they wanted to do was run out the clock. They wanted to run out the clock on the confirmation and hope that the Democrats won the next election so that they would then say, well, we're not going to confirm Kavanaugh, because they knew that Kavanaugh had been confirmed. So what they did was Christine Blasey Ford actually said, I don't want to go public with this. And I think it was Feinstein just on her own, like at the confirmation hearing, she's like, how about this? We need an FBI investigation. And don't leave. And they criticized the investigation was too fast. It needs to take its time. Take a couple months, you know? It's sort of similar here, where it's like run out the clock and then say, well, and yeah, I would be pissed too if I'm a leader. You know, we talked about this before, but even if you go back to seemingly ideological opposites on the court, like Ginsburg and Thomas, they were very cordial to each other, right? There was a lot of respect, even if, you know, people that like Thomas would say, F you, Ginsburg, and vice versa. As far as they went, there was a lot of like respect, and there was very little. I don't read as many of these cases as you, as the decisions, but I think it was out of the ordinary to accuse, you know, one side of being partisan or a power grab or something. So I can understand why Alito would be like, listen, I'm going to politely say, I find this to be abhorrent. What are you doing? Like, this is nonsense, you know?
It's above and beyond, right? Because at a certain point, you can have colorful language in a dissent. You certainly can. I think Justice Scalia won I think it was in the Obergefell decision, which was the gay marriage decision. He quoted the main opinion and he said, if I ever wrote something like that, I would stick my head in a bag, which was, a pretty funny thing to say. But he didn't say, you guys are engaging in naked partisan, non-legal processes. He said that you are interpreting the law incredibly badly in a way that is implausible and nobody should take seriously. So people do go hard, but I think there's a difference between going hard about how bad the other side's reasoning is and accusing them of naked partisanship. I think that is actually different and meaningfully different. But this is the era we're in, Rob. All our institutions are being tested by this stark divide. And again, I want to go back to Justice Thomas's speech. There are people who are out there advocating for a colorblind constitution, for the values of the Declaration of Independence. And there are other people who believe in their heart of hearts that the only moral way forward is that they are allowed to do racial preferences because they're the good guys. And these forces are butting up against each other. And it does not appear that they're going to be in equilibrium much longer. It does seem like the friction is getting profound.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. I think that case is huge.
It's a big one.
This next thing, possibly even crazier ramifications. So there's a lot to go to. I'm going to skip to this one. We'll see what you think about this. James Comey's been indicted again. It's one of those things where it's like, whether you like the indictment, you dislike the indictment, it's clear that it is ramping up. That they like him or hate him, like this move or dislike this move. It's clear that Trump's Justice Department's like, we're going after people that were in these institutions that we don't like. And so what do you think? One, before we get to the overall strategy, what do you think about this charge specifically?
All right. I hope that I've established some credibility with your channel for being, generally speaking, on your guys' side. And look, let me give you all the disclaimers. Credit where credit's due. They got it past a grand jury, right? A grand jury indicted. And we don't know. Maybe they have some investigation. They have data that I'm unaware of. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. But if you just read the indictment, it charges Comey with threatening the president with a death threat because of the 8647 seashell picture. And that is a giant crock of shit. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, and maybe I'm biased. Like, I've heard the term 86 used my whole life. It has never been used for murder. I think some people say it is used that way. For me, it was always like, you get 86 out of a bar, you get kicked out. Like, when I read that, I thought he was calling for impeachment. That was my inclination. So even getting into before we get to the free speech issues, like, I don't think this is going anywhere. Now, I could be wrong. They could have some kind of crazy investigation, right? They have all this evidence. I don't know. Maybe he was involved in like a signal chat, and he had all these people who were going to coordinate different threats to make President Trump, as Destiny would like him to be, afraid to go outside and speak in public. Like, maybe they have that. And if they have that, then they'll win. But if all they have is the seashell picture, I wouldn't get your hopes up. I don't think this is going anywhere.
So I'll play the other side of this. First off, Todd Blanche, was making the rounds on the Sunday shows and said, if it was just the post online, we wouldn't have done it. We have more. And the purpose of the indictment is not to outlaw all the evidence. It's just to quite simply outlaw the charges. So that's the first thing. Second, I've been convinced. I've been convinced by my Democrat opponents. I have heard these two phrases for 4 years. No one's above the law. The bar for starting investigations is very low. I concede. Yep. Hey, as long as they didn't manufacture evidence, this is a crime. They took it to a grand jury. The grand jury agreed. No problem. I don't have a problem with it. I say good. In fact, I say great. If James Comey did nothing wrong, he has nothing to fear. That is the policies that James Comey put forth. He had no problem going after people like Mike Flynn and trying to get him in a perjury trap. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I will not advocate breaking the law. If it turns out that Todd Blanche or anyone in the Trump DOJ breaks the law, that's unforgivable. That they should be held accountable for that. This doesn't look like breaking the law to me. This looks like no one's above the law, just following the same pattern that was laid through from the previous administrations that we were told was all copacetic. It was all good. And I think if I could go further, we'll see what other evidence they have. I believe that it's going to be a good PR victory for them and or perjury trap, because when they finally get James Comey to talk about this, if he goes with I just found these seashells laying on the beach, trust me, bro, it wasn't me, he's fucked. So he's going to have to tell the truth, and then the truth will come out like, yeah, this guy fucking lied. And the fact that he lied about it probably shows that there's somehow more of an intent. Now, having said all of that, I think this is just the ways to an end. I think that they're still going to try to get Comey on other charges, more serious stuff, leaking classified information, etc. And I think that I don't want to live in a world where 86 to me, I've heard it usually to mean murder, but even still, I don't want to really live in a world where anyone that says something like that on social media is being charged necessarily. But I didn't want to live in a world where presidential candidates get fined $500 million because they screwed up a little paperwork. I didn't want to live in a world where we use FISA warrants to spy on presidential campaigns and presidents. I didn't want to live in a world where we changed the law with Democratic operatives so that we could sue someone in a Democrat favorable district for Trump like E. John Carroll did. I don't want to live in a world where a campaign contribution leads to 37 felonies. That's the world Democrats wanted, and like we said with the gerrymandering, you made the argument there, it would almost be negligent not to gerrymander if your opponents are. That's how I feel with this. It will never end until the very people that enforce these consequences on the rest of us suffer the same consequences they enforce. So until I see something illegal that was done here by the Trump DOJ, I'm the biggest supporter of this. And man, it's too bad it's not in Pennsylvania. I would have loved to have been on that jury. I would have gave it a fair shake.
So let me grant you all that and see how this lands with you. If I grant you all that for the sake of argument, I think even with all that, the problem here is the difference between an investigation and an indictment, right? The bar for opening investigation is very low. You can set a lot of perjury traps during an investigation, by the way. You can talk, lying to a federal officer is a crime. You can just interview him and ask him about the seashells, right? And then if you can prove he's lying, that's a crime by itself. But the problem with this is if I'm going to put on like a partisan hat and just lean into what you were saying, by the time Bondi left, we were all like, she's a joke with no credibility. because she kept stepping on fucking rakes and she kept doing things that lowered her credibility, right? They just had the Southern Poverty Law Center indictment. That one actually has some legs. That could go either way. Depends what facts they have, right? And the question is, do you believe they have the goods? Do you believe they actually can prove this? If you do, that's a big deal about the Southern Poverty Law Center. If you don't, it's just a joke, right? They've said they have the goods. They can prove this. They have the investigation. They have all this new evidence. If it turns out they do, then Blanche gets a lot of credibility. Blanche suddenly looks like, you know, an enforcer on the block, a big time lawyer who's gonna, you know, if Blanche indicts you, fear in your heart. If he doesn't, if they're talking big, but then they go to court and they get laughed out of court because they don't have the evidence, now we're getting back to Pam Bondi land. We're getting back to the land where people are like, oh yeah, when the Trump administration indicts you, you know, probably it's partisan politics. Probably they can't prove it. Probably it's a joke. I don't think that helps them. So if you're going to bring the indictment, you got to be able to prove it. You got to be able to win at this point. You're staking your reputation on it at that point. So if they have the evidence, by the way, then this is the right move. I'm skeptical about that. But, you know, by the way, I wouldn't know. I have no basis for knowing what evidence they have. So we'll see. We'll see if Tom Blanche can really back up what he's saying at this point. But if he can't, I just don't know why we'd want to have another Pam Bondi style administration where it's like, you know, a year from now we're like, oh, this fucking Blanche guy has no credibility.
Pam Bondi. But the major reason for me for Pam Bondi having no credibility, well, obviously the handling of the Epstein files and a couple other things, was the mere fact she did not bring any charges. So no, I won't blame Blanche at all. I really don't give it this. It's no offense to you, but this argument means jack shit to me. Grand jury accepted it. Good enough for me. See, the difference is this. I honestly would on a jury, if I was on this jury and didn't find the evidence to be compelling, I would say not guilty. Democrats don't issue the same thing. They don't. If Trump was charged with anything in a DC jury, guilty. Doesn't matter what the evidence says, right? Over and over and over again. We saw with, who was it? With Durham, right? The one charge he brought. Dead to rights, they had the dude. DC jury says, not guilty. We don't give a shit. So, hey, I'm all for go to, as long as you can get a grand jury, as long as you're doing it by the book, bring 5 million of these charges. I don't give a fuck. Every day. I'm for it. I don't have a problem with it. This is the world the Democrats wanted. And what I see is our side never plays by the same game, so the Democrats get away with it in impunity. They're certainly going to aggressively go after Trump and everybody connected to Trump when they win. It's going to happen. And they'll get the convictions, even if the evidence isn't there, even if it's absurd, just like we saw with the Bragg case, just like we saw with the, which one was it? Fannie Willis that did the Mar-a-Lago shit? Like the property. They'll get the. I refuse to say, well, because half of the country are so fucking partisan and hate Trump so bad that they'll vote guilty all the time. So when their DOJ brings the charges, hey, as long as they got the guilty verdict, I guess that's legitimate. But because the other side is going to have a higher standard of evidence, well, then we shouldn't bring the charges unless we have. Nope. Leave the chips fall where they. Who knows? Even if the evidence isn't that good, maybe you get 12 favorable jurors. I don't give a shit. I do not care. The credibility of them means nothing. There is no credibility. None at all. The credibility of the DOJ and the FBI after the Biden administration and during the first 2016 could not be lower to me and to millions of Americans that agree with me in the way we vote. So I don't give a shit. It's like it's already a pig covered in mud, but they might get a little more mud on them. I don't give a shit. I don't care at all.
Well, again, just making like the pure partisan arguments, right? I think the danger with this stuff is if you do it and it doesn't work, right? Then you give the other side the opportunity to have their cake and eat it too. Like they get to come after you and claim the moral high ground. They're like, yeah, like look, they
do that anyways.
They did, yeah, but I'm talking about how do normies perceive it, not how you perceive it. How do people like who occupy these political spaces? I'm saying like your average, not so plugged into politics.
Okay.
Voter,
But not to relitigate an argument we've already had.
Oh, we've had, and for the
I'll
audience,
just be quick
Rob and I
about it.
argue about this shit like every day.
One, you saw all the corruption and still didn't vote for Trump. Second, are you going to vote for Democrat because you don't like this indictment of Comey and let them pack the court?
I'm hardly a normie, so no. But
the normies are?
Well, I think the difference is when you give them, if you give them a bone, like we brought this charge that doesn't make a lot of sense, and then it turned out we promised all this evidence, and then it turned out we don't even fucking have the evidence, right? That's just
every Trump indictment.
That's giving a lay. Well, I mean, a lot of them, some of them, they got convictions, right? Like
what? Yes, but that's the point. Just because they got the convictions, just because.
I'm saying on a purely partisan basis. If you bring it and you get a conviction, that's a W. If you bring it and you don't get a conviction, that's an L. Just optically. That's the point I'm making.
Well, that might be true.
Do you disagree with that?
Well, of course. Okay. But how important is that optical L? To me, it's an even bigger optical L to not bring any charges. That's an even bigger up, because what that says to me is, what the hell's the point of all this? What the hell's the point? And the Democrats come in and they weaponize it again, and they get away with it again. Every time they protect their own, they aggressively go after, and they get worse with it every time. And it's not going to stop until the contract. I would push for the disbar. I think that right now what we need to do is see state bars disbar every Democrat they can for anything. Just aggressively go after them. Give them the Eastman treatment. That's what I would like to see. I don't see enough of it. I'd like to see fucking them going after every Democrat politician. Look at their books within the confines of the law. It will not end until that happens. It will not end.
For obviously selfish reasons, I would not like to see a wave of partisan disbarment. So I'm gonna go on record saying I don't think that's a good idea. But yeah, I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, what this is going to boil down to is execution. Like, if you can actually get a conviction here, or even if you can produce a whole bunch of evidence that makes this plausible, then you know what? Like, this is going to look very different, and I'm be singing a different tune down the road about this. But the thing is, when these things happen, you're right. Opening an investigation, the bar is basically non-existent. But when you make the legal judgment to bring a case, you're putting your reputation on the line. You're saying this is correct, that I can win this. And when you get a reputation for losing, you're a loser. That's what happens. But by the way, what the fuck do I know? Do they have reams of evidence I've never seen? Possibly. This one doesn't. I read the Southern Poverty Law Center one, and I said, holy shit, they might have this. They might have this. They might have some stuff. This one, they haven't given me any reason to believe that, but they might in the future.
If that's the standard we use, the majority of these sorts of political cases would be brought in D.C. There is probably a 1% chance or less, even with the most damning evidence ever, that you're going to indict Democratic politicians, particularly for crimes that would be going after Trump administration with that jury. In fact, someone even said it. One of these Democratic operatives didn't realize they were giving the game away the other day. They were like, good luck with the D.C. jury. Right. We know. Yeah, they know. Yeah. We all know.
So and that's why these are all like North Carolina and which is Alabama indictments now.
So maybe it would be better, they would have a better case on a different issue to bring it in D.C. But if we went with your, for the normies, the optics argument, then we would never bring any charges against Democrats, because we know they would lose, because no matter how good the evidence is, the D.C. Democratic jury is going to say not guilty. So then it becomes self-fulfilling. Well, we can't charge because we're afraid that we won't win, so therefore we won't charge, and they'll aggressively charge even if there isn't a case, and they will win because of a D.C. jury. So I'm okay with getting colorful and saying, well, as long as it's within the confines of the law, and even you are not suggesting that this is illegal, you're just saying that it's a bad optics.
I think it's bad. I think it's bad strategically. But ultimately, I also just have maybe a little more faith than you do in the difficulty people have when facing a federal judge. When I have been in court and a federal judge is like staring someone down and saying like, "Nah, this is what the law is." There's you get in those courtrooms with the big marble. You're staring up at the judge, on the bench. They're telling you what the law is and the sacred duty you're about to undertake as a juror. I think I don't disagree with you. There are some people who are so partisan, they just don't care. I think there are some who are just so partisan, they don't care. But a lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people are normies who really will do their best, like you would do your best, I'm sure, like I would do my best. And ultimately, I think that, it is the responsibility of prosecutors to bring cases they think they can win. Now, I'm taking Blanche at his word and the lawyers involved that they think they can win this case. That's when they bring it, that's the gamble that I think they're making. They're saying, I think I can win. Okay. Okay. You're like, but then I can then expect them to put forth evidence that could be winning. Right. And if they don't, then I'm going to be disappointed that they didn't have such evidence.
Well, I'll be disappointed they wouldn't win. I wouldn't be disappointed they don't have such evidence. I'd say back to the drawing board, indict them again. That's what I would say. Do it until you're out of power. And if Republicans win again in 2028, then have J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio. Keep it up. Never stop. Never, ever stop. Indict them all
Can I
the
ask
time.
you a purely political question? This is
Sure.
this isn't even moral or legal at all. This is just like pure political strategy. Do you, in terms of the segments here, I'm assuming that there's a segment on the populist right that is just upset that not enough has been done to drain the swamp, to go after X, Y, and Z people, right? And then there's a segment in the middle that I'm supposing that is like, doesn't love stuff like this and is turned off by it. I'm guessing you're saying the segment on the right is numerically bigger and is available in the midterms?
Yes and no, right? Like, yes, because I don't know anyone other than you that I would put in the segment that doesn't like this. I literally don't. I can't, like, my normie friends would be like, oh, Comey got indicted. What? Oh, anyways, I don't really give a shit. Right.
Okay.
So I know a lot of people that are very excited. And I know a lot of people that would be indifferent. Then I know people that are pissed. That's basically the left. But I don't know many people that are like, I'm a Trump voter, but this upsets me. I don't know hardly anyone. I'm assuming you'll get the Lindsey Grahams or whatever of the world, or the people that support him that might think that, sure. But I would say even those people, at the end of the day, I think there's very little chance if they bring 100 indictments like this and get 0 convictions that they're going to be like, how's the economy? Democrats won't pack the courts?
Yeah.
I just don't think, I think most of those people understand what happened to Trump was bullshit, that we're likely to vote for Trump, or they're just not paying attention. And I don't care. If winning continually means that Democrats could do whatever the fuck they want with the legal system. And by the way, I could not disagree with you more about there's near a 100% conviction rate for January 6 people, even the nonviolent one. I think in places like New York and especially DC, there is no fair trial anymore. There's not. There's a chance you might randomly luck in to 12 jurists, but overwhelming. How about the Secret Service agent that got assaulted with the sandwich thrown at him? Open and shut. Couldn't be clear. Not guilty. Constantly.
Can I? Well, I mean, though it was the sandwich case, which has its own problems. But
was he guilty?
On that, probably technically, but that's the kind of case that you often lose.
Right. That's just it. But when it's Trump with Mar-a-Lago, $500 million fine. Technically,
that's what the jury is really designed to do, is to prevent like silly cases in a lot of the time.
Unless it's against Trump or Trump-connected people.
Well, it's a sandwich, Rob. It's a sandwich.
It's assault.
Sure, but it's also a sandwich.
Okay, how many January 6 people didn't hit any
Rob,
officer and spend time in prison?
The thing that I was driving at and I was wondering about, and this is, again, just a pure political optics question, and I don't know the answer to it. Last time Trump was president, the kind of the Trump populist right, like the kind of the base that you're talking about, didn't show up in the midterms. They just didn't. Like that was why they got washed out. Do you think are they showing up this time?
These midterms?
Yeah.
I think that it's largely going to come down to the economy, and if that's the metric, then I think that Democrats are going to win. Will the Trump populist base? Some of them are upset about the Iran thing.
Yeah.
But I don't for me. I don't see the political. I don't see what percentage of people do you think there are that's like Todd Blanche lost this case, I'm voting Democrat.
Well, I think that the danger here, and again, I'm doing this from like an amoral political calculus thing, is that the SPLC case actually struck a blow. Like that was actually like a big, like, it was like, holy shit, all the stuff that like people like Elon Musk and Trump are talking about, NGOs, they finally figured out how to action it, right? So, and it did seem more credible. Like, yeah, there's people who think there's nothing there. There's people who think it's a good one. But at least it has an air of credibility that I think is harder to deny. So I guess the question is, like, are you jeopardizing that? Are you jeopardizing the sense that you're on to something, that you finally cracked the nut and you're getting somewhere with this if you start, racking up a whole bunch of L's? This one strikes me as thin. Now, again, we are speculating because, like, for all I know, like, just to be clear, if they have like a Signal chat where James Comey's talking to his friends and he's like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put up these fucking posts and we're going to let him know that people are fucking watching him and he can't go outside at night. Like, oh, okay. Like there's a whole lot of shit that they could have that would make this very different. But I guess what I'm just imagining, Rob, is it's like, fuck it, the midterms happen. And a year and a half from now, you and me are doing a show. We're like, well, fuck, that didn't work. That's probably where I think we're going to end up.
Well, I think that happens without the Todd Blanche case. And I just don't see. So, like, let's assume this case comes, the Comey case, right?
Yeah.
And they lose that, but they win the Southern Poverty Law Center. You think that there is going to be a substantial amount of people that are going to be like, wow, look at how insane that SPLC case was and what it proved and how corrupt these people are. But I don't care about that now because the Comey case didn't win.
Well,
I don't see that case will stand on its own. I don't think that the jury's going to be like, you know what? I thought Southern Poverty Law Center was guilty, but I heard about this other case with Comey, and that seemed to be a flimsy case. You would agree with that? It's not going to affect the actual jury on the.
But I think more likely, no, it's not going to affect the jury. I think more likely what's going to happen is the Southern Poverty Law Center case is going to be slow. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be a slow burn because there's going to be lawyers involved, and it's a big it's a big NGO with a lot of money to throw around, and this is going to be a slow burn. And in the meantime, you're going to get a bunch of headlines about them losing another Comey case, which is just going to create its own shitty news cycle.
I don't. I think.
Look, I could be wrong.
Real quick, do you think this case will resolve before the midterms?
The Comey case? No, probably not.
So then, what's the harm?
Politically?
Right? Because I think all you do is drive up enthusiasm. Hey, they're arresting people, thank goodness, right? And by the time the case is resolved, it'll be resolved in the same election cycle of the Southern Poverty Law Center case.
I would see it for me personally, and look, we have different takes on this sort of thing. I would have really liked for basically for Trump to have fired Bondi and then reposition Blanche as like a very different type of dude, where it's like, yeah, okay, Bondi did her thing. We all know how that went, but like, there's a new sheriff in town, and when this shit is happening, it's very serious. It's for real. That I think would have been better. Like, I think it would have been better to rebrand in that way than to rebrand in a way where, like, if I take your arguments, and again, just granting them, where you're like, I don't really care how it turns out. It feels, I understand like where you're coming from, but it feels scattershot, right? It doesn't feel like you're dealing with hyper competent, nasty prosecutors they're bringing like the ironclad case they're going to win, and they're really at the heart of it. It feels political. It feels scattershot, and I think as a result, it just doesn't have the same resonance with people. But again, like, who knows? I'm not a politician because I don't have Trump's political instincts. So who knows?
I completely agree with your point of the need to rebrand from Bondi. Bondi was someone who didn't indict anyone. Todd Blanche is someone who's indicting people. Well, and I think that if we would have rebranded Todd Blanche to be like, also don't indict people, I don't consider that a rebrand.
Well, but it wasn't just that she didn't just indict people. When she did indict people, it was a fucking joke, and it kept imploding. Right?
Well, it's like only in the Halligan case.
Well, and the Comey case.
Well, yeah, the Lindsay Halligan, because right, but that was there's nothing like that here.
And the Letitia James. I mean, they just I hope, but like to your point, if they get to trial, that's better than Bondi did. Right? Like, Bondi was getting blown out of court in the first couple weeks. So if they can even get to trial, that's better than she was doing. That's a pretty low bar, but that is better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just for me, it's I'm I know it's a fundamental difference that we have. I don't give a shit anymore. I have no trust in our DOJ, in our legal system, in that. I just don't.
Mhm.
I think the Democrats shattered that since 2016 with FISA warrants, with constant investigations into Trump, disbarring his lawyers, piercing attorney-client privilege, the whole 9 yards. We don't have to talk about it all here. So I don't give a shit. Do something.
Yeah.
Just fucking do something. I'm tired of these people operating with impunity, laughing their asses off, knowing there ain't a chance we even see a day in court. Ain't gonna happen. Just throw their fucking asses in court. Grand jury was for it. If I find out that something illegal went on, that's different. That's a different calculus. But it was good enough for a grand jury, good enough for me. Bring the charges. That's how I look at it.
But just so that we're clear, because I mean, I know that we have this fight all the time, so I'm not trying to indulge in it too much. But like, if I were to bet you on that there'd be no conviction, I assume you wouldn't want to take that bet.
No.
Yeah.
But I could say that about every single case. Every single one. I say that about Southern Poverty Law Center, any Act Blue case that they bring. I am so pessimistic until I actually see one person involved in these institutions face a criminal penalty.
Yeah.
Even if there is a conviction, it'll be a slap on the wrist.
Well, but
and the chance of a conviction with all of them will be low. So
this is why this is such a bummer for me to talk about, because like in the era before we did political prosecutions, and for the record, like I understand why you're upset at me with like like how this played out in the past, the argument. I totally get your position. But I was very opposed to the Trump prosecution for the exact same reason. I said, like, if you get into the business of political prosecution, it doesn't ever really end. There's no way to get out of the cycle. It just leads to more and more of the same. And what it does is it cheapens the legal system. And I think this conversation has shown that, right? Like, I think in your eyes, the legal system is cheaper as a result of what happened to Trump. So, it does cheapen the system when we keep doing this. And for somebody who's like on the inside with how this stuff works, man, if federal prosecutors took you to trial in like the Southern District of New York, not a political case, like a regular case, they fucking had the goods on you. They had the goods on, like, they might lose. They don't always win, but if they lose, it's because of some extraordinary lawyering, right? Like, they don't go to trial unless they have the evidence. They have the evidence. It was locked up. And that created a lot of faith in the legal system. My big complaint about the Trump thing was like the New York charges where they called it a novel legal theory. Well, it's like, don't do novel legal theories for political opponents. Don't do that, because you cheapen the legal system. You make people believe that this is all smoke and mirrors and political party games. And that sucks. That sucks. And I take your point that from your perspective, that's where we are. And maybe there's no way out but through at a certain point. But I guess part of me just wants to stand up and say, like, this sucks, man. Like, it sucks to be in a position where we're talking about political prosecutions in this way. Because, like when people were saying to me, we got to prosecute Trump, we got to. And I was saying, if you prosecute Trump, and then I laid out a parade of horribles, this is the parade of horribles. I was like, if you prosecute Trump, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And that's where we are. It's exactly what's happening. So it's one of those situations, I don't know if this happens to you, Rob, where you stand up and you're right about everything, and everyone tells you to fuck yourself. And then like a year later, it turns out you were right about everything, and nobody gives a shit. They just tell you to fuck yourself again. It's just one of those, and that's why it's a bummer for me.
Well, two things. I'll just say, one, those people you talk to, if we don't do things like this, they'll say, see, Ryan, you were a fucking idiot. Right? So that's number one. And they would say, we haven't learned shit. We're going to keep doing that. And the next time Ryan stands up and says, don't do that parade of horribles, they'll say, there weren't last time. So why do we give a shit this time? We also don't give a shit. And there is no incentive for them.
This is the point I have to concede to you, is that I did stand up, and I think a lot of people stood up when this happened before, and were completely fucking ignored. Right? And like, if the prosecution of Trump had been constrained and not so wild, and if the prosecution of like J6ers had been limited to the ones who like broke into the offices and like the violent, I think that we would be in a different situation today than we are, which is fucking annoying, because that's what it's frustrating, because I was making the same arguments you were making, to all my left-leaning friends. I was like, we can't fucking do this. if we do this, it's going to be a catastrophe. And here we are. So
I agree. The last thing I'll say, a wise person once told me that if one side's using a tactic that's morally tenuous, but within the confines of the law, it would be negligent for the other side to not do the same. I remember a long time ago, an hour and a half ago, someone told me that.
Some fucking retard. Who said that?
Yeah,
retard.
It would be a great debate. Real quick on a couple more super chats. The great Zach Gilpy, $10 says we need to go on offense. Even if we lose, we still win because the other side has to play defense instead of constantly being on the offense. I agree with that mentality. And then he also says for 10, the normies don't really care one way or another. They'll still vote for us even if we lose, whereas our base wants this really bad and might not vote for us if we don't go ahead with it.
If that's true, that would be at least a political argument in your favor.
I think that's you could always run the old, but the Democrats are so bad to our base, right? So I think that it overstates how much. Sure, the Groypers aren't going to vote. Okay, but other than that. All right, there's other cases to get to, but I thought we'll lighten the mood here a little.
Yeah, you and I haven't yelled at each other in a little while, so it's good to get out of our systems.
So we have today another episode of the Nuremberg trials.
What manner of creatures are they, then, these bipeds in the prisoner's dock? Is there any punishment commensurable to their crimes? No punishment is fit enough for them. The International Military Tribunal, in the name of the freedom-loving nation, is sitting in judgment of the criminals.
Now, this one's a little different. It's not really a legal take, and it's not one of the lefties that we debate. And I honestly don't know your take on it. I mentioned I was going to do this, so I haven't heard your take on this. But recently, the satirical newspaper The Onion purchased InfoWars after Alex Jones lost it in a trial. And Tim Heidecker, I think that's how you say his name, formerly of Tim and Eric on Adult Swim. They used to do a lot of shows. He is now playing an Alex Jones-esque character. So I thought we would look at this a little, and we would get our opinions on the old Nuremberg trial, what our opinion is on this satire. So here we go. This was episode 1.
Once more, I did this earlier this morning, but I'm going to sip from the blood of the Forsaken. This is real human blood. You can find this at the InfoWars store. This is a human blood curated from the Forsaken and the sinners. All right, this is pure premium blood, tested, FDA unapproved.
I'll barbecue your ass flat. I will eat you. So all you spirit cookers act all tough all day, how you're doing your little satanic rituals, drinking blood and stuff. I'll drink your blood. You understand that?
Now, I wanted to include that little part. He goes on. I know we just got a little segment, but that's largely what Tim's doing. He's doing I'm drinking the blood of children. And, I think his voice is very good. I think he has a good impression. But what do you think about the segment?
I got to ask clarifying. This is important because it's going to affect my score.
Okay.
Is that edit theirs or yours? Like, did they cut to the old Alex Jones content?
No. That's the edit that's mine for the sake of this.
That's you and Blackout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tim didn't immediately go
all
over
right.
to Alex.
Well, then I'm docking them a lot of points because, all right. I think concept 10 out of 10. Like, you have InfoWars, you have it in the rainbow colors, you're in prison. That's a very funny concept. Execution, 2 out of 10. Like, it just wasn't that funny. Where I was going to change it, I was going to give them a good score, actually, is I started laughing when they mixed it in with the old Alex Jones content. That was really funny, but that's the points that I should give to Black Elk. So I'm going to give them 10 out of 10 concept, 2 out of 10 execution, 6 out of 10 to Black Elk because they would have gotten.
Now wait, that was not my edit. That's InfoWars or Alex Jones' edit. But
okay.
I just said mine in the sense that it's not Tim Heideck.
So Black
Elk.
Elk,
Black Elk's great.
Black Elk, you get no fucking points. Anyways. Fuck off, Black Elk. No, but like that's what made it funny was the cut to Alex Jones. That was funny. The skit by itself I wasn't laughing. I laughed when they cut to Alex Jones. So I think they could make that funny. Like it is an intrinsically funny bit to like have the InfoWars and the rainbow. Like that's funny. But I wasn't laughing at the beginning.
There's several problems with it. I agree the premise is funny. Now I'm pissed off because I think that Alex got punished far more.
Granted.
But forget that, right? The premise of just someone, forget that he bought Alex Jones or InfoWars. It's just the premise of someone doing this, like a comedian. That's fun. There's ripe with comedy there with Alex Jones, right? And the voice is great, right? And the mannerisms and stuff. Here's the problem, though. Two things. Norm Macdonald talked about how in order to do a successful impression of someone, there has to be part of you that likes them, right? And it is clear that these people don't like Alex Jones. And that leads to the second problem, which is they fundamentally misunderstand him, right? They can't do anything that's funnier than Alex in the current mode they're in. In fact, the joke that would be funny, like you said, would be them cutting to Alex. Like Tim says some shit that people are like, this is stupid. No one would ever say something like that. Then they cut to an actual clip of Alex saying something even more ridiculous. That could be like, there's some potential there. And then new Alex is like, disheveled because he can't keep up with the insanity of old Alex or something. There could be some humor there. But the problem here is like, they're doing the like, I'm drinking the blood of children. But if you're going to do comedy with that bit, it's got to be Alex calling other people out, right? For drinking the blood of children. Like maybe you do something like this, like, today we're going to look at these old Kool-Aid commercials. Look at that Kool-Aid. That's not Kool-Aid in the Kool-Aid man bursting through. That's the blood of children, blah, blah, blah. But to have Alex drinking it, it's like, no, you fundamentally misunderstand Alex. Alex is accusing other people of that. Like, and so unless, I don't know, the bit doesn't make sense to me. And it's a shame because you would think that they are investing money in this and they knew that this was coming for a while, that they would have started with their best foot forward with some funny bits. I mean, my goodness, it's Alex Jones. You got 20-something years of material, right? Like,
and there's a lot to, well, the other thing that's really important about making the bit work, and this is just some basic common sense, is imagine the Venn diagram of people who watched Alex Jones InfoWars and people who watched The Onion's InfoWars. There's no crossover. These are entirely different people. So if you're going to be making a joke about something that Alex Jones previously said, you kind of got to show him saying it, right? They weren't there. They didn't watch the episode. Like, so you're doing, it's weird because what they're doing is, to your point about like liking the guy, they're not doing an impression of him. They're doing an impression of what they think people who never watched him think he said. Right? And that's, I don't get why that would be funny. I think you actually do need to have, you need to get into the source material. You need to show people him doing some funny shit. Yeah, like a back and forth with him and Alex being so crazy that you can't keep up with him with his real quotes. That's funny shit. And I assume because they bought InfoWars, they have the rights to all those videos.
I would guess.
They certainly, you would think they would be able to do that.
It just seems very low effort, right? That's the other thing. It's like, like if I could imagine like even left-wing comedian, like I feel like Conan O'Brien could have knocked it out of the park with something.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Not him doing the impression, but his, like the writing team that I used to watch in like the early 2000s, like Conan, that writing team could have did something really funny, I feel, like with Alex Jones, and like they're going to make it a segment. Like they used to do the super low tech Arnold where they just cut out his mouth and the guy'd be like, oh, what's jiggle on the way? Like I could see them doing something like that and it would be funny, even though I think what they're doing to Alex sucks. I would be like, that's funny. And the other thing is, you're right about the audience that's going to watch that, at least after the initial curiosity, is basically going to be people that hate Alex and have probably only seen a clip or two of him. So lean into that, right? Just like lean into just making fun of Alex as much as possible. The whole like, I'm drinking baby's blood or whatever. It's like, I don't know. That seems kind of dumb. So if you're playing to your own audience, I feel like they couldn't do some stuff like, we're getting ready, it's January 5th, you know what that means, everybody get on the bus, we're about to save this nation. Get some red meat or something for your base. So
yeah, you know what it reminds me of? I flipped over to Andrew's channel last night when I was just idly in the evening. And I guess his invasion didn't work because of technical issues. So he was having chat come up with ideas for another Brian Shapiro cartoon. And the first 10 ideas or so were just met with derision because they were awful. They were just fucking terrible ideas. And then on the 11th or 12th, he laughed and was, and then the rest were terrible. And then I stopped watching. But that's what I saw him do. And I feel like that's what had to happen here. Like, was this your first idea? Maybe send it back to the writer's room and be like, that's not your best work, guys. Let's just be funnier. We don't have to accept this first cut idea. Because there's some very obvious jokes you can make with Alex Jones, but I think you could do better. I think you could dig deeper and find something that's going to strike a little truer.
And the other thing is, and I know this probably wouldn't be first in their mind, but Tim and Eric had a very absurdist style of humor themselves. Lean into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just make it like another Tim and Eric show, and it's just Alex Jones as a character, right? And they're just doing silly shit like they would on their normal. That could be funny, right? But ultimately, my judgment is boring, low effort, and I'm afraid they're turning the frogs gay. What say you?
I think this reminds me of every Onion headline I've read in the last 10 years. It reminds me that they used to be people who were funny, and they are attempting to recreate the magic and failing. It seems like all their other content. I would say this didn't do it for me.
It sucks too, man. In general, forget the Alex Jones thing. Yeah, there's nothing worse than seeing like an artist, like a musician or a comedian or an actor, start to get older and then lose. Like I'm sorry, I know that all of them go left wing, so it's going to be partisanship in my part. But I watch like Ace Ventura or The Mask, and then I see like Jim Carrey moaning on about politics. It's like, what are you doing, Dumb and Dumber? What are you doing, right? Like it's like it was just the most it's like that era of comedy's gone, it feels. Especially in Hollywood, where it was just like, you had funny movies, there wasn't particularly a message. It was just like, it's funny. There's some slapstick bullshit going on. And it's generationally, like, I'll be able, when my son's like, 14 or something, I'll watch Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura with him. We're going to laugh our asses off because it's still hilarious,
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me give you an example. Like back in the day when I was living in New York, the George W. Bush days, the Onion used to get distributed physically. So you could pick up a copy on the street. Yep. And they ran a headline once. They were picking fun at George W. for, trade issues between Mexico and Canada and whatever's being kicked up back there in NAFTA, that sort of thing. And the headline read, Mexico and Canada decide to cut out the U.S., build overpass. And they had a picture of an overpass being built across the United States. And it was kind of like a veiled jab at George W.'s politics, right? And I saw this like 70-year-old man in Manhattan. He went to pick up a newspaper, and he clearly didn't know this was a joke newspaper. And he was just like, what the? It was so funny watching this guy react to it. So like the Onion used to be actually quite funny, even if you didn't agree with them politically. Like it's funny. Like you don't need to love the guys at the Babylon Bee to find them funny. Like they say, because the stuff they say is often quite funny. So yeah, it would be nice if they could just, get back to the days when they actually, I don't know, did comedy. But, that's not been where they've been for a while.
Yeah, I used to like the Onion as well. Like some of my they used to do the Onion Sports. I thought was hilarious. And they would do just the news and pictures. I don't know why it made me laugh so hard. One of my all-time favorite. It's not an article. It's just a picture with a caption. And it just says, Special Olympics basketball game rocked by thunderous dunk. And it just shows this guy in his wheelchair, like above the rim coming down. I laugh so hard. I'm like, oh, it's so silly. But,
They ran one. I can't believe it's still shocking to me to like think about it. Just to show you guys how much humor has gotten muzzled, because this was back a long time ago. They ran a headline that was "Man Graped by Bear," and it was like a 2-page visceral pornographic description of the events. Like it was like a play-by-play written in the style of an erotic novel, and you're just like, what the fuck? It was so out of pocket and like shocking and funny. as a result, they just don't have the balls to push the envelope that way anymore.
Yeah, and it's and in general, like I think that there's more reasons than just woke. I saw that stupid show where they eat hot wings. I saw a clip of Matt Damon, and they were asking him about, or maybe it was him or it was Vince Vaughn. One of them. It's probably Vince Vaughn, and they were asking about this, and he was like, "Everything has to be an IP now. Like, there's no risk. Everything's like, oh, it's an intellectual property. Oh, the Bearstein Bears. There you go. We'll make that a movie, And it's like the movie's like old school, or before that, like Caddyshack or Animal House. Like that's a risk now. We might spend money and get these actors, and it's a risk. So I lament that because I think that's one of the. Honestly, that's part of why we're so divided, because no one could just laugh. Like you used to be able to be like, fuck you, but you'd laugh, and now it's like everything has to be hyper serious. You can't make that joke. And, so it's unfortunate. I think this is another example of it, but,
yeah, I mean, look, we're getting to the point where, sometimes when I talk about stuff, if I'm like with the Live and Learn crew or the people like that, they'll say like, oh, that's just a culture war point, or that's just a DEI point, and dismissively. But the truth is, I think we are reaching a point where there is actually a vast moral gulf that is opening between, the way people just view the world and view the country. And unfortunately, that's not funny. It's honestly not funny. And maybe that changes down the road. I hope so. I hope saner heads prevail. And I hope that, the people who value the Declaration of the Independence and the values we are founded on win, because that's the America I want to live in. But it's, it definitely does feel like it's coming to a head. And, maybe we get some cold water and people go back to their corners, but doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon.
One question I want to ask you before we go. Now, I know the big case that I think both of us are looking at is the birthright citizenship case. Any idea when, like, you're predicting that we may hear a decision on that, like, given what we know of the docket?
That should be this summer. But here's the thing. I think we alluded to this earlier. If Trump wins, it'll probably come out a little bit later because that dissent's going to take a long ass time to get ready. And partly because they'll drag their heels, but also because, if Trump wins and it's like a 40-page opinion, the dissent's going to be like 120 pages. It's going to be the most upset dissent you've ever read in your life. So I would expect that to be more towards the end of the summer. If it happened really fast, I don't think you'll be enthused about it. Let's put it that way. But that's one to watch, Rob. That's definitely one to watch. And we'll see, because that changes everything. Like I know Sean and I are going to be covering the temporary protected status programs. Sean is potentially criminal.
Yeah.
Show. On Wednesday, we're going to watch the oral arguments, but why does that matter? Well, it matters because all their kids get birthright citizenship. If they were legitimately here temporarily, I think you and I would care a lot less about that.
Sure.
But the problem is, it's like you bring people in on these temporary programs. They're here for 25 years. Their kids are citizens. Their kids are now growing up. Like, are you really going to talk about deporting 15-year-old citizens? That's insane. And birthright citizenship actually paradoxically makes it harder to give, compassionate status to people who come from places where bad things have happened, because it produces a real cost. So, this is the alpha and the omega of the immigration issue. So we'll see.
Did you get a feel? I assume you listened to the oral arguments on the birthright citizenship case. Did you get a feel one way or the other? Does it change your prediction?
It's going to be tight. I don't think it went splendidly for Trump. I think it's a tough case. I definitely, for those of you who have been following this issue, there's two prongs to it. Do you deny birthright citizenship to people who are here illegally, and do you deprive it to people who are here temporarily? The argument's a lot better for temporary than it is for illegal, for a variety of kind of archaic and Byzantine legal reasons. It did seem like Roberts in particular was quite skeptical, and that Barrett was somewhat skeptical. And those are likely to be key swing votes. So, I think you can safely assume that Alito and Thomas are, on side on this one. But even Gorsuch and Kavanaugh played it very close to the vest, and I don't think so this could easily be like a 7-2 going against Trump. I wouldn't be stunned if that happened. But if Trump wins, it's going to be because the lawyers were able to convince Roberts or Barrett, who are I think were the most skeptical at oral argument. And I think it's a coin flip. I don't have a strong feeling of how this one's going to turn out. It's a really close issue and a tough case. And look, if Trump loses, then the right needs to get very, very serious about proposing a constitutional amendment. They need to start really pushing for this. It needs to be a talking point. It needs to be a mobilization point. It needs to be the kind of thing that develops groundswell over time and a wedge issue that never goes away. Like this has to turn into like the big political issue of the next 10 years if this case doesn't go Trump's way.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be tough in this day and age to get an amendment will be tough, but yeah. Well, we heard what you have going on Wednesday. Anything going on tonight, tomorrow that you wanted to?
Yeah, I'm going to be, I don't think I'm going to be streaming anymore today. I did stop by the extravaganza early. So if you're regular viewers, that's going to something maybe you saw on Rumble. I am working with my editor to determine whether or not that content can be posted to YouTube. I'm not entirely sure.
I'm assuming not because of things you were saying, if I had to guess.
No, not, I didn't say anything, but I did send it to my editor. It was like, what are our options for bleeping this video such that it might comply with YouTube TOS?
Well, you want to know what I did last night? I played a Nick Fuentes video, and the point of the video was him saying, like, basically, I don't care about immigration anymore. Vote Democrat, blah, blah, blah. The immigration system, white people lost the country, blah, blah, blah. And I'd listened to this clip, like 30 seconds of it. So I played it, it was good, and I made the mistake of letting it go another 10 seconds. And he used a word that I don't think YouTube would be I was like, this video is going right to the trash bin after which sucks because clearly I'm not using that word, but you know how it is.
The algorithm scrapes the word, and then suddenly you've got a strike, or you don't want that. You don't want that smoke.
So it happens. You gotta be careful. Someone always tells me you play to not lose. If there's a question, get rid of it, because you don't want YouTube to run afoul of the YouTube algorithm. So
I will say, obviously, Andrew, I appreciate him inviting me on. Just met Jake for the first time on the show. Andrew was willing to gleefully lead me into that trap. Andrew's like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Come on, Andrew. We'll watch some clips. And Jake was like, you don't want to see these clips, bro. So
well, it's funny.
Humor.
It's funny because, especially like from Jake's perspective, not knowing you, when we will have a guest host on there, you never know how they'll react, right? Mm-hmm. Like we had the Sham Wow guy, right? And it's like, I kind of thought he did this movie called like the Uncensored Comedy Movie or something that was supposed to be all fun. So we were like, oh, this dude. And I was shocked that he was kind of like, yeah, that's pretty funny. But I thought he was going to be like really potty mouthed and stuff. Then I'm like, I wonder if we put him in a weird place. He was like, whoa, because he's now running for Congress, which he announced on the show. So I'm wondering if we're like, we set up like, okay, here's a product, right? Here's an infomercial product. Rate the pitch man and the product. And maybe he's like, I'm here to talk about my congressional run. What the hell are you doing to me? So it's like, you never know how it'll go over there. So.
He's like, I'm running for Congress. They're like, that's great. Hold on. We got to say the F slur like 95 times. That's going to be a good, that's going to be a good video for you.
So it's like, now, ultimately, I think he was a good sport about it. But yes, it's like, a show like that, people don't understand this, right? Like, if you're involved in real world stuff, right? Maybe you talk a certain way with your buddies out at the bar, but if you're trying to be more professional, like if you're helping someone with a campaign, you really don't want to be on a show like, hey, here's a bunch of slurs and curse words, and it's probably not the best image for your man that you're, or lady that you're trying to help their campaign. So,
well, it was my first time on Rumble, and it did not disappoint. It was exactly the Rumble experience.
Well, I'm glad you got.
I don't know if people are watching on Rumble right now, and if they are, in fact, they're giving you the Rumble experience. But
yeah, I could call upon them, and I know what they'll say. There's a lot of 3 and 4 letter words that'll pop up. I assure you. But yeah, it was a great show today. I'm glad we've been too nice to each other for too long, so I'm glad we had a little disagreement.
Yeah,
not too much.
We got to find something else to disagree about. Like this is always the fucking thing we disagree about.
Yeah, I'm sure we could get something here coming up. Once we start to get into election season, matters of strategy and things like that, I'm sure there'll be stuff to disagree with. I have a big debate Wednesday. Well, big on reparations, which I'm super excited. Somehow that's still a debate topic.
You're taking the positive?
I am negative. I'm against reparations.
I didn't know that about you, Rob.
I would think if you didn't know me, I'm just say this, right? If you didn't know me and didn't know my opponent, I think within 2 seconds you'd be able to guess who's pro reparations and against reparations. Just a hunch that it would be pretty obvious. I kind of look like a guy that would be against reparations.
I don't know, Rob. I didn't watch your stream last night, but I was just listening to it in audio mode, and somebody was reading this beautiful book out loud. Just listening to the inspirational words that were coming off your stream, I feel like you seemed like the pro-reparation side of that debate.
I feel like I'm going to be at some event and some 65-year-old black lady's just going to kick my ass and be like, I'm one of the people in that book. And I'm going to be like, I'm sorry.
Blackout, can I make a request? I want an edit of Rob reading from the book with all the commentary and jokes stripped out. Just edit together him reading it straight through, and then we can clip that. I think that would be delightful. That would
be like when Gilbert Godfrey used to just read 50 Shades of Grey in his ridiculous voice. He didn't make any jokes. He's just like, and then she went to the bedroom with him, and just the most offensive shit. It was ridiculous. It was funny. But all right, well, hey Ryan, I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon. I know Andrew still wants to do a stream with both of us, so maybe that will happen this week. But you know how that is. He's always busy. But otherwise, I'm sure nothing will happen in the next 2 weeks.
This seems, Rob, like the cycle where politics and law will die down. We'll have nothing to talk about in 2 weeks, and you and I will just get up here and give Blasterbot the Dino battle he's been looking for.
Finally. By the way, I don't have it. Oh yeah, here. Check this thing out. So I'm gonna do a grift stream in June. If you want to join me, I'd be happy to do it. I found this thing is like $20. So it's a Jurassic Park toy. But check this out. It allows you to battle different dinosaurs. So here we got Pterodon. You put him in here. Okay. And then listen.
Oh, shit.
Pteranodon.
Okay, that is the authentic noise.
And then, that of course. And then he'll fight this guy, And this...
Sticky Moloch.
And then you hit the button and they battle. We don't have to listen to it, but
oh no!
You want to hear? Who do you like?
Oh, I'm going with Pteranodon.
Okay, I think you're probably right, but I'll choose the other guy. Sticky Moloch.
Dino Duel. Begin. Ooh, vicious slash.
What is happening?
Here we go.
We have a winner. Pteranodon.
Ah! Yes! Boo!
I mean,
it's rigged. It's rigged.
This is obviously the content that people come for.
Oh, dude, this is. So Blasterbot's been sending Dino donations forever, and so I told him every 3 months we'll do like a absurd grift stream, and the next one's gonna be we're gonna have the audience donate to draw a card, and then we'll set up a bracket. So there's like 50 dinosaurs, and we'll set up a bracket and see who wins. But yeah, that's it. Blasterbot's please. He's like, yeah, it's peak. Why are we even talking about other stuff?
This is all he wanted. Hey, before I head out, because I know we're over time, I think a few more supers came in. Do you mind if we hit those?
Yeah.
I want to make sure people got
Naughty Germ, $5. Thank you as always, my friend of mine. And then on your end, Deckard Kane, $5 says
cool name.
Yes, Blade Runner, right?
No, that's Diablo, the video game.
Oh yeah, okay.
Stay a while and listen.
Yeah. Okay. So you're more of a nerd than me. Anyways, the bitch should be Alex Jones is always right meme. Grabs a drink, it's accidentally the blood, Masonic symbol under a script, and cut to AJ. Yeah, that's not bad. That's what I'm saying.
That's actually funny.
that, like, just having him invert what he said isn't funny. So yeah, that's good. And then the great Mr. Ubercross, $20 says, in law school, I was part of a research project for civil rights SCOTUS cases. We had tons of the interim versions of decisions. Really interesting to see how their arguments change as they're sending them back and forth. That is interesting. I never thought of that. How's that process normally play out? Obviously, we could listen to the oral arguments, but is it, I always just assumed it was like they go back to the chambers and they're all on their own and they just come up with the theory. But do they have discussions? Are they writing back and forth?
Yeah, it's often writing. It's often like exchanging drafts or exchanging memos, right? And then there's kind of like a vote counting exercise that goes into it because you've got to figure out, roughly speaking, like, oftentimes they might send an early draft or even just a summary memo that says, this is what I'm thinking. And then there's kind of like an informal, like, how many votes would that get? And if it has enough votes, then they assign someone to write it. But, because you got to figure that out before you write the whole thing up. And then you got to write it in a way that's going to keep your votes. Because if you write something that the 6 people disagree with, suddenly you lose your votes. And then the dissent starts deciding what they're going to do based off of, what the majority looks like. And while I gave them a little bit of a hard time today, obviously the dissent does need extra time because they have to read a near final version in order to write what they're writing.
But there's taking way too much time versus, of course, you would understand that it'll take some amount of time.
Yeah, but it's a fascinating process, and the idea that the judge is trying to get votes and trying to get the draft together is very interesting because most of the justices say they don't spend a lot of time in like deep conversation about this stuff. It's mostly through exchange of papers with some conversation. And I think the practice varies, but it's interesting.
And Ubercross on my side, $20 goes, here's one for you, Rob. Thanks so much, Ubercross. Says, the judges do a ton of writing, addressing each other's stuff. Used to be handwritten notes. You also see judges say, if you change X, you could join me to the opinion. It's very interesting. Let me ask you this. Can you recall, I know this is tough off the top of your head, I'm just assuming. Mm-hmm. Can you recall the time that you've heard like oral arguments and you're like, oh, yeah, that's the way this is going to be decided? And then you were surprised that it was actually different than what your assumption would be based on the arguments?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Off the top, I'm going to struggle with that a little bit. The tariff case was, the outcome didn't surprise me. I thought Trump was going to lose that one. But what really surprised me was that Justice Barrett wasn't willing to get on the major questions train with Justice Gorsuch. I thought that she was going to vote against it. I think that was clear. I thought Justice Gorsuch was going to vote against the tariffs. That was clear. And we covered this. I agreed with them. I thought they were right about that issue. But I thought Barrett was in line with him. And it turned out she just wasn't. She had a totally different view of the law than he did. So I found that very surprising. And sometimes you'll see, sometimes the justices will beat up on somebody because they're going to rule for them. And they're trying to make sure that they're vetting the argument and that they're getting everything they're getting everything they need. They're stress testing it. So sometimes you see that come out that way. But often,
I wondered. That's what I wondered, if there was ever a situation where it's like, the justice walks in and goes, I'm 95% sure this is the way it is, but just to make sure, I'm going to be very aggressive against that side, right? To assuage all doubt in my mind. And so to the audience, it might look like, whoo, that justice is clearly against this because the questions, and then the ruling comes back and it's like, wow, actually was for it. So I just wondered, because there's a lot of, since I've been doing this show, I'm trying to follow oral arguments a little more. Mm-hmm. And then I try to follow people that are talking about it. And there's a lot of tea leaf reading, right? Where people are like, oh, well, given this question by this justice, we know how they're going to vote. And I was like, really? Because I haven't been doing this long. So I'm like, is that the way it is? Is it almost always like, yeah, you basically know based on the questions? Or there are times where you're like, not necessarily, like, or it could be, a dissent for a different reason or concurrence or something like that, that maybe you didn't expect.
Well, this is a weird court too, because here's the thing. Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson are very, very clear with how they're voting most of the time. So like, there's no ambiguity there. Justice Thomas is not always as clear, but his record is so consistent that you always know how Justice Thomas is voting ahead of time. So that's not really, that's rarely a question. And Alito is always very clear. So when people are reading the tea leaves, it's always Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Barrett, Roberts, right? Like that it's always on those two, because the other ones are typically fairly obvious in the way that at oral argument, you know what they're thinking. So it's a weird mix where we're always trying to read the tea leaves, but it's always of these four judges. So then, like, I think, you know, if you're a lawyer at the Supreme Court, you're investing a lot of time in figuring out, like, what arguments does Justice Barrett like? How can I write a brief?
Right.
When I did my Supreme Court case, you get your amici, the friends of the court who are going to write briefs, and we were doing the same thing. We were saying, like, okay, we need to find an amicus who has a good argument that's going to appeal to this justice, because we have arguments for this justice here and here, and this amicus is covering it, but we need somebody for that justice because we think they're in play. Like you got to go deep down these rabbit holes when you're prepping for that. And I think it's fascinating, but yeah, that's why it's weird these days, because, you know, like, you listen to Justice Sotomayor just lay into somebody, and it's not like there's any ambiguity what she's going to do.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. You can almost predict them, her and Jackson, without ever having to hear a word.
I'm looking forward to reading that dissent. After what Alito wrote, I'm imagining that dissent spicy as hell.
Yeah. So, well, hey, Ryan, thank you so much. You have a real job, so I'm sure you'll like to get to sleep at a reasonable hour. I'm going to keep streaming, so I'll be on for at least another hour here. It's always a pleasure, and it really does. I hope the audience learns as much as I do. I think it's making me far more intelligible about the process, because I'm sure you get this. I know just from discussions we've had just before the show and stuff, like, it's hard to know a lot of the nuance of, like, what's happening behind the scenes. People like me, you just get the decision, you could read the decision, and that's it. But the actual process and all that stuff, it's nice to have insight into it. So we really appreciate it.
No, appreciate you, Rob. Appreciate you having me on as always. And I think that hopefully for the viewers of this show, you are better equipped to have these arguments. When somebody comes at you and they give you some take about the VRA, you have some understanding about what happened, and you don't feel like you can only recite what the New York Times said about it. There's other perspectives.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm linking Ryan's channel, server to my channel. Please go over and sub. Let's try to get him to 5,000 by the end of next month. Ryan, always a pleasure. And
Rob,
we'll see you 2 Mondays from now.
All right. See you soon, buddy.
Take
Have
it
a good
easy.
one.
Yep.
Bye.
All right. Give me a second. Please, please, please. I really like Ryan, even when I'm arguing against him. He's probably not wrong. You don't bring cases that you know you're going to lose. But I'm of the, you never know. You may win, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm not particularly worried about the, I'm worried the opposite end, that we never bring charges. So, all right. Little that. Bam! Oh, okay. Do I play my intro song? What say you, audience? We do the intro song? We're officially transitioning here. Let's see. Sure, why not?
Dollar on my mind, Naija on my plate. On my little phone, I dey buy a stage. Study with small change that I bundle. Now my wallet heavy like Toyota Tundra. Neighbors in my house say, who be this song cool? I say, na small internet also no wahala. I shout, yes sir! When the chart go higher, eating fried plantain with American swagger. My mama asks, you sure say this thing legal? I say, mommy relax, I be digital eagle. Cryptocurrency, turn me to big baller. From one small room to mansion with crawler. New thunder outside, see the paint color. Everybody shout, I'ma send me the dollar.
Yeah, we're not doing the whole song. Welcome to the Normal American Show, host Rob Noerrder. Glad you're all here. Had a great time over there in Law and Order. Ryan Mullally. We're 25 minutes late. That's okay. Who gives a shit? It's us, right? We're happy. How has everyone's day been? My day was very good. Though I will say, it's spring cleaning season. So there's a lot of bullshittery that I have to do. My wife's got me taking a lot of stuff out to burn and a lot of stuff to take to the dumpster. And she's doing all the work, but I mean, what say you all? I shouldn't have to do anything, right? That's true equality. My wife does all the cleaning, and I make sure that my spot in the couch is nice and comfortable, you know? And I say, good job! That's, that's how I thought it was supposed to work. What's going on with the division of labor in my home here? I do next to nothing, and it's too much. What to talk about tonight? My goodness. Well, sorry, I'm reading a message here real quick. I'm very bad at multitasking. Now, I pissed off all the groypers yesterday. Today, I'm pissing off centrists like Ryan. I'm like, so who can I piss off? What's the group I could piss off today? I don't know. Who do we got? Just one. Let's just single one person out. Just one person. We're gonna just shit on Verifier. We're shitting on you tonight. That's right. The whole stream. No, I'm just kidding. I thought about that, like running for office. Like when I ran for Congress, I was just going to be like, look, here's the deal. I swear I'm going to do everything. Here's my plans, blah, 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 for policies. But one of my policies is like my neighbor, Jim. Fuck Jim. I'm going to do everything possible to create laws just to screw Jim over. Join me in hating him. We can all come together, left or right. This guy's the worst. Like, you can just submit shit like, I think his yard looks like shit. Yep, fine. Find that son of a bitch. Thank you so much. It'd be great. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, Lavin, I sort of agree. The yard's my domain, housewives. That is the law. So says Judge Dredd. I am the law. Oh, man. But just a political party that's just about hassling one random guy. That's our whole agenda. We're just going to hassle this random guy, So, I don't know how long I'll go tonight. We're going to try to get to this goal of $357. Mondays are always a slow day. I need something to spice it up. That's the problem. What would my audience like for me to do? Spice it up. And the DNC and that random guy's Donald Trump. Hey, it works for them.
We could always spin up Disney whip songs and just see how many we can afford. Maybe if we drop it down to $20 Disney whip.
Listen, I'm not doing that. But I will say this. There will be a stream coming up that's going... There'll be a different stream coming up. That's all I could say. I'll be quiet about it. After the stream, I'll be able to explain more. I'm in a good mood, so it sucks to talk about depressing shit, but might as well talk about depressing shit, right? So apparently, another shooting outside the White House. Let's see if I can find the. I want to be careful. I'm watching this clip to make sure that we don't see. I won't play the clip. An armed man opened fire in the vicinity of J.D. Vance's motorcade near the White House, per the U.S. Secret Service. The man opened fire on Secret Service. Secret Service returned fire, taking the shooter down. No law enforcement officers were injured. So apparently what I'm reading is they saw the firearm, approached the person to see what was going on, and then the person started shooting at Secret Service. Can I link it somewhere? I can't do that. You know, it's so weird. We live in such a weird time where there was a child shot as well. I don't know. That's terrible if true. Let's see if I can find more info. I'm looking here real quick. I'm not seeing anything yet, but I had heard rumors that was the case. So if someone has that, they could link it on the Discord. Oh, my Discord, just in case. But to talk about this for a minute, a kid was shot in the crossfire. That's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Remember when an assassin broke into the White House press correspondence dinner the other day? And I was like, it won't even be in the news cycle in a week. Here we are. This is who we are as a country now, right? This is it. And it's just going to keep accelerating. Because there's never any consequences. I saw the judge apologized today for his treatment. Now, in fairness, to push back on that narrative a little, not saying that's not true, it is, right? But apparently that shipwreck crew who represented a bunch of January 6 people said that judge was also apologizing to January 6 people about their treatment. He said that's just the way that judge is. But yeah, it's still stupid, terrible. I don't even know what to think anymore. I mean, what more is there to say? It's a bit tiresome, isn't it? There's never consequences. This is sort of where a lot of my sort of disagreement with Ryan comes. When it comes to the violence, when it comes to the corruption, it just seems like there's never a consequence, ever, for the left. Once in a while, the individual that commits an act of violence is punished. Other than that, the narrative persists. There's never any consequence. It's surreal. It really is. And I don't know where we go from here, honestly. I'm sort of bummed out that I hear a kid was shot. That really bums me out. Does anyone know the status of the kid? I'm trying to find that. I can't find anything. All right, someone sent me something here. Juvenile bystander was struck but is being treated for non-life-threatening issues. Okay, well, I mean, that sucks still. But here, this is from C-SPAN, so I assume that's not going to have anything that violates TOS, maybe falsely. So let's watch the clip here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Quinn. I'm the Deputy Director at the
Oh.
United States Secret Service. I have Chief Richard McCauley with me, Chief of United States Secret Service Police. Approximately 3:30 this afternoon, our plainclothes officers and agents that consistently patrol the outer perimeter of the White House complex identified a suspicious individual that appeared to have a firearm. They called in support from our marked uniformed Secret Service police to make contact with that individual. Upon making contact, that individual fled briefly on foot, withdrew a firearm, and fired in the direction of our agents and officers. They returned fire and engaged. That individual was hit. He's since been transported to the hospital. I have no comments on his condition. I can tell you that at least one, I believe only one bystander was hit by the suspect. That individual, it's a juvenile, did not sustain any life-threatening injuries, but he's also receiving treatment at the hospital. I'll point out that not long before this shooting occurred, the Vice President's motorcade did transit through this area. The investigation itself, in terms of the use of force in the shooting, will be conducted by Metropolitan Police Department. I'll pause there.
Matthew, do we know how your guys identified this person as being suspicious? Was he on a radar or just how he appeared?
No, my understanding is they observed a print, we would call it, visual print of a firearm. These are trained surveillance detection personnel out there looking every day to look for just that. Not far from the White House complex, and they observed a visual print of a firearm.
Did he attack the motorcade in any way? Did he approach it with any menace?
No, not to my knowledge.
Was there any other reason to believe he was not just having firearms?
That's enough for me.
And do we know if the child who was struck was definitely struck by the shooter by accident, perhaps by the officer?
I can't say, and we'll let the doctors figure that out, but everything I've seen leads me to believe, and the investigators believe, he was struck by the suspect.
So, Mr. Quinn, this man was spotted near the White House, but not on the property.
Correct. Not on the property. We're not far. We are, just real quick, we're not far at all. You have been here from where this incident took place.
Can you tell us exactly where he was spotted? Not here? It was...
I can't say exactly, but they had been following him for a brief period of time before uniformed police engaged.
You mentioned the near the White House first.
Let's go one at a time.
You
Go
didn't
ahead.
approach the motorcade. Was there any indication that that was his intent?
No. But we will get to the bottom of that.
Did he say anything to the officers?
I'm not at liberty right now until we get
But
for
was
sure.
there any sort of communication?
Again, I can't say right now.
Was the Vice President in the motorcade when he passed before this incident happened?
Yes.
And Matthew, we see a backpack and sneakers there. Are those the suspects or are those the kids?
I'm not sure. The backpack you probably see is our first aid trauma kit that our officers providing life care after shooting the suspect.
Do you have an age on the child that was struck? Is it male or female?
I can just tell you right now that it's a juvenile. So do two more questions, guys.
The other attempts on President Trump's life?
I'm sorry, say again?
Do you believe this is related potentially to the other recent attempts on Trump's life?
I can't say. I'm not going to guess on that. I can tell you that every time, one, we're patrolling this area, and every site we do, 24/7, hardcore. Whether or not it was directed to the president or not, I don't know, but we will find out.
Weapon recovered?
Yes.
And Matthew, one last question, guys.
I'm going to hold on that.
And Matthew, what's the condition?
I'm sorry, real quick. This
Do you
lady.
believe on the man who was by the
I don't know specifically, so I'm going to not tell you. An adult man.
And Matthew, can you just confirm, it was not a uniformed Secret Service officer, but a plainclothes, and was it a male officer? Or
That-
agent? Male agent?
That first
That
made...
fired the shot?
No, I can confirm with you it was uniformed Secret Service police officers that engaged the suspect.
But it was a plainclothes who made the first visual?
Yes, sir.
So, sounds like they just see a suspicious, what looks like a firearm. They approach, hey, what's up? And the dude starts panicking and shoots at them and runs. And then a juvenile gets hit in the crossfire, probably from the guy shooting back at Secret Service. You know, if you thought the celebrations were disgusting when Charlie Kirk got killed, imagine the celebrations if Trump or Vance gets killed. Yeah, it could be Birdie the dog. It could just be a dude unconnected to political reasons. I don't know. We'll see. But you just know if they succeed, and the attempts won't stop. They're not going to stop. And if they succeed, the celebrations will be amazing. It's truly, it's so depressing. Yeah, I saw that brewery in Wisconsin. They were offering free drinks if someone takes Trump out. It's just, I don't know. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know what to say. What do you say? Hopefully it was just a lunatic that it wasn't connected to politics. As bad as it is to say that because a young person got at least wounded, I mean, you hope that's the case. You hope it's not another example of extremist political violence. I'll call them what they are. Terrorists. Insurrectionist. That's their word, not mine. I don't know. It's just unbelievable. Just terrible. Trying to look up any more details. Not seeing anything. That's basically the newest thing I see. So, well, you're right. Like I don't know. I'm a young old man. I'm only 41. But I've heard people say, like, if you read the book Days of Rage, this is sort of what it felt like with like the Weather Underground. And it was just normalized behavior. And then I think a lot of it's just that I'm lucky to have lived through a pretty calm period politically. I was born in 84. Obviously someone attempted Reagan. But after that, I'm trying to think. There were no like serious like firearm discharges at H.W. Bush or Bill Clinton or W. Bush. He did have that shoe thrown at him. Obama, really? Now it's just like with Trump. I mean, if you had to guess if there's a better than not chance at this point that someone in the Trump administration is at least hit by a firearm by the end of this Trump administration, I would say there's a better than likely chance that that'll happen. And that's horrible. But that's how I feel. It's just, I don't know. I really don't know what to say anymore about it. It's so damn depressing. And maybe that's why I'm so adamant about the idea of like, well, we don't like the way things are going in certain aspects, so let's vote and put these people into power. Like the stakes are so high. I just don't know. "31 live viewers. All right, I need to think of something else for a minute. What am I going to talk about? I gotta think of something else. Sarah's got 31 live viewers right now. Maybe she just started.
You could talk about robnoerr.shop.
I could, but I choose not. No, that's fine. robnoerr.shop for all of your merch needs, everyone. Check it out. Shit, I accidentally hit this button.
Women in messages has a weird infatuation with men's organs. He's a syndicated radio host, and it's all about respect. He's Brian Shaprio.
Wow, is he cool? Boy, is he cool. Alien disclosure tomorrow night? No shit. Finally. Are we going to find out Avarice is an alien? So
I take that back. You're not supposed to fucking tell him, Rob.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's going to be right here in the Norm America show. We're disclosing aliens tomorrow. Maybe.
And you wondered why I could do the Disney whips for so long, and you wonder about that blood?
It's true. Speaking of Sarah, I guess I'll say this. Obviously, I'll have more to say as that situation goes on, but I have had people that ask for an update. No real update in my pending litigation of being sued by Sarah Tomato. But when we find out more, I will let you know. In other news, well, let's go into the old bag of tricks. Let's see what I got. I don't have anything fun. Minecraft stream? You missed the lore. Yes, you did. Oh yeah, I saw that EOD. Warren Smith covering the Brian Shapiro, Rachel Wilson debate. Chop, thanks for the membership, man. Appreciate it. Really do. Not one step back, MF says, we still voting for rhinos in November and supporting the rhino in chief, asking for a friend. Nah, Doug. We're voting for all the feminist child murderers. Pro-abortion all the way, right? Pro-trans rights. That's who we're voting for. Not one step back. Ironic name. Not one step back. Let's take a step back and vote Democrats. In fairness, that person didn't say that. See, I don't know a lot of these people, the Brittany Venti and these people. I don't know them. I'm out of the loop. I know there's a lot of drama with people, but I'm out of the loop. I just don't know. I don't have good enough ops anymore. I used to have good ops. Now I just, you know? How could she sue when they use clips of me? Rhino Lover's Rage. Yeah, I look like I'm raging here. Aaron Rose Phillip, Oppression Olympic winner. Is this that picture I saw? Probably. Yeah. The first transgender woman with quadriplegic cerebral palsy signed a major agency. I mean, it's going to be hard to beat. Imagine being a black woman or being black with cerebral palsy and being like, look, it's not enough. I'm not the ultimate victim. I'll become trans as well. Nailed it. You did it. That's right. Now they'll feel seen. Most suppressed person in the world. I could beat him. I could beat that dude. Somehow I could be more oppressed. Average white guy in America? I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what. I think it's 11 o'clock. I've been going for 3 hours. I think I'll end the stream early tonight. Womp womp. Which I apologize for. I don't know. I was busy all day and I didn't cover a lot of the news during the day that I saw. I was ready for the Law and Order stuff, and then the shooting bummed me out. I was going to talk about Spirit Airlines and shit like that, and then I'm just like, I don't know. More fucking... Hopefully the shooting ends up being nothing. That's just a shitty excuse. Bam! Now, we'll leave it play out. There are no whip songs tonight, so if someone wants to donate $100, feel free. But no necessary for it. Let's think of positive things. How about that? The UAE Israel angle? Boo, says Lineback. There was a shooting at Taco Bell. We only meant to pistol whip. There you go. Nice. I played this game today. You remember the game Guess Who? Does anyone remember that game where you get like a card of a person and you ask like, does your person have glasses? And then you flip down. You know what I'm talking about? So we got my son, Hank, Guess Who, but it's Mario characters. And he beat me the first round. Then the second round, my character was Wario. He had to guess. And I was really crushing him. I was down to like one of 3 options, and he still had like 11 or 12 yet to flip up. And he's like, I could go check on Mom. She was in Hank's room cleaning. I didn't think anything of it. I just sat on the couch waiting. Here, the little shit. You know what he did? He went up and he climbed up on a chair in his room, so he had a line of sight to me, and he saw my character. And the problem is, it's very clever. The problem is he can't successfully end the deception, right? So what you would do, as you know, is he sees that Wario, and then he comes back. It's like, does your guy have yellow? Yeah. Oh, right. And then act like that. But instead he comes back. He's like, I have a guess it's Wario. I was like, you cheated. And I was like, hey man, cheating's no fun. He's like, I had fun. It's hard to argue with that. He's like, I had a good time. Fair enough. It's hard because as a dad, when he gets up to shenanigans, I find it hilarious. But you also are supposed to be like, come on now, you can't cheat. You know? His favorite thing to say, like, he's always like, I have a deal. So we'll be like, okay, let's clean up toys and go to bed. He'll go like, I have a deal. And it's like, okay, what's your deal, Hank? And he'll be like, how about you let me stay up late and you clean up the toys? I'm like, no, Hank, that sounds like a bad deal to me. He's always on something like that. He's very, very funny. His negotiating tactic, instead of compromising, is just always asking for more, right? He's going to be a hell of a used car salesman. How about I stay up late tonight? How about no? How about I stay up late and drink a milkshake? No! Okay. How about I stay up late and I play video games and have a milkshake? No! He cracks me up, man. He's really funny. I really enjoy being a dad, though. He's the best. What is going on? These Met Gala outfits. I can't tell if they're real or AI. You're funny. Oh no. Hey, Baxter boy, thanks for the $5, man. He's a menace. He's something. All right. I think we're going to raid over to Speakeasy. You guys go give him a hard time tonight. I'm going to cash in early. I don't know why. Super tired. I slept good last night, too. I don't know. Just one of those days. I'll be back in a better mood tomorrow. I'm not mad. I'm just tired. So, I'll be back in a better mood tomorrow. We've gone 3 hours here. We talked about all the stuff that I really had to talk about tonight. So, apologies. Austin Hall wins. We didn't get to our goal of 357. The bastard wins. Wherever he is, he's celebrating tonight. Can you believe it? 2 days ago. 357's unreasonable. You're unreasonable! Bastard. Yeah, 3 hours. I went 3 hours. That's not too shabby. But normally I go until midnight at least. But I'm going to cash it in. So thank you to Avarice and Black Elk and all of my mods who are excellent. And everyone who donated tonight. And everyone who liked the show. And subscribed and chatted. And everyone that didn't like the show, thank you as well. And I don't feel bad that we didn't reach the goal tonight. You want to know why? Because you guys are always incredibly generous. And I can't thank you enough. I really can't. So thank you so much. And thank you for being, even when I don't have my fastball on a day like today. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Remember, I got the debate on reparations coming up Wednesday. That's going to be at 9 p.m. Oh, 2 Wills. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. $10 says, peace out, Rob. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then next week, we'll just have some great shows. And there's one other reason to be thankful tonight. Not one damn whip song. Kind of feels nice. I feel like I'm cheating or something. But we didn't get through an episode without Avarice trying to talk and being
I did
muted.
say that. I said I feel sad.
I feel great. That's the best part of the show. All right. Well, listen. We talked about, a shooting outside J.D. Vance's motorcade. Maybe unrelated. We don't know. But it is really illustrating just how hot tempers are getting and how, the left continues to encourage violence. So I want you to just take a moment, think about the life of Charlie Kirk, how they assassinated him, how they mocked him and continue to do so, and his family. And then he has those daughters that are going to grow up without a father. Never forget that. So say a prayer for a moment for Charlie. Enjoy the raid over in Speakeasy channel, and I will see you all tomorrow around 10 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. As always, have a good one.
Only in America is it possible to say, you know what, I don't like the way the country is going, and to do something about it. Take that risk. Take that leap of faith. Stay involved. Trust God and act obediently. Romans 12:2 verse. That God will use all things, for good for those who love him. It's bigger than you. I want you to remember that. It is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. You are here to make somebody else's life better, the pursuit of liberty and freedom. You know what gives me strength? The hundreds of thousands of you that say, Charlie, keep going.
1 Corinthians 5 and 15. So that's all pretty amazing evidence, not just intra-biblical evidence, but extra-biblical evidence that Jesus Christ was a real person. He lived a perfect life. He was crucified, died, and rose on the third day, and he is Lord and God of all.